Always late to the party.
Perfect. Good evening. Hello, everyone. It is 7 p.m. and we call to order the Hamilton Select Board meeting of Monday, September 9th, 2024. We are going to do a roll call vote as we do have one member on the Zoom. So I will start with you, Tom.
Tom Myers, present.
Bill at the end.
William Olson, present.
Rosie Kennedy here.
Bill Wilson here.
And Caroline Bull, you present. First things first, we'll do our announcements and board openings. As always, we look forward to folks joining us on our various committees and doing the good work of keeping this town running. So we have one opening on the Conservation Committee. We have two associate openings on the Council on Aging, one opening on the Cultural Council. The Finance and Advisory Committee has one associate opening. The Hamilton Development Corporation has one opening for a 3-year term. The Historic District Commission has two openings for 3-year terms, two openings for 2-year terms, one of which must be a resident of the Historic District, and one must be a resident realtor. We have one at-large opening for the Human Rights Commission. With that, I will turn over to Select Board and Town Manager reports. Tom, anything to share from the internet?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick update. So we met with the school building committee met a couple Mondays ago on August 26th, giving us sort of some updates from the summer, but also talking about what's ahead for the fall. So there's sort of a lot going on in the next couple of weeks, both from a project standpoint, but also from a public engagement standpoint. So they did note that, over the next few weeks, they'll be doing a life cycle cost analysis, which is essentially going to report out an HVAC system selection for the selected site. They're also going to be doing some workshops as well as a traffic study to look at, traffic within the proposed site at the Cutler location. Then there's also going to be a number of engagements over the next several weeks. So the curriculum night at all of the different schools, as well as the open houses at Cutler, Bucher, and Winthrop. The consultants will be setting up shop there to speak with folks and sort of kind of answer questions and sort of address any concerns or issues people might have with the school, and just sort of give as much information as possible. So lots of opportunity for engagement over the next several weeks. So make sure folks are looking out for those. And if you're attending any of those open houses or those curriculum nights at the schools, both the high school, the middle school, and then the 3 elementaries, make sure to look out for the consultants and ask any questions. They're there.
Awesome. Bill Olson, anything to report?
Oh, no, busy week getting back into school, so that's what I've got nothing to add tonight.
Rosie?
Yep, couple of things. Conservation Commission meeting on 8/28. The salient issues from that meeting were the Bridge Street buildings, Lot 9 at 185 Bridge Street, does have an erosion control plan submitted, but it's not in compliance. And so the person who is the owner of that property has been issued 12 citations as of that date, and he owes $2,800 so far. The other properties do have restoration orders that are in compliance with a restoration plan. So we'll see what happens with that. The next thing that was of concern to the Conservation Commission is the athletic fields project. There was an update, and it seems that the Fields project has not complied with pre-construction conditions, including testing for PFAS for 6 PFAS chemicals, and they are out of compliance with the requirement to submit substances that are contained within the artificial turf material. So the chair was pretty concerned about that and actually went down to have a site visit, and he actually instituted an enforcement order to stop construction until they are in compliance with the pre-construction orders. One of the concerns is that on sites 1 and 2, the PFAS levels on the 4 chemicals that were tested are 3 times higher than is allowed. That's a concern, so you can understand, I'm sure everybody can understand, that the Conservation Commission and indeed the town should be concerned about what's going on there. So the other thing that the Conservation Commission is endeavoring to do is get a consultant to find out why there's such an abnormally high level of PFAS in those sites that abut the Clark property. So they're going to be figuring out where their money is. They said that they have about $100,000 somewhere, but they're not quite sure where it's located, so they were going to be reaching out to Wendy, our finance person, to find out where that might be. So on to the ZBA meeting from 9/4. The interesting thing that happened at that meeting was that there was a freestanding accessory apartment with a garage on their agenda for a public hearing. And there was a lot of really good discussion back and forth about what constitutes an accessory apartment, what's the purpose and intent. It's kind of a maximum size accessory apartment, but it is allowed up to 900 square feet. So ultimately, they did approve it. It was a very good conversation. And finally, on 9/5, I attended Gordon Conwell Theologic Seminary, meeting with the developers, Alex and Vince, and the residents. And the upshot of that meeting was that the residents are concerned about the wastewater treatment facility, and they're concerned about further development on the site after the 209 apartments would presumably be approved. So that remains to be seen what's going to happen there. More conversations in the future, but I think it was good. There was a very substantial turnout. That's that. I need a notebook.
So, good update. A few already touched on some of my updates relative to the schools, back in session, both in the classroom, the athletic fields. Rosemary did speak about the athletic facility. They did get an enforcement order to shut down, primarily for, from what I heard, a lot of paperwork stuff and compliance related. I think there's overall 19 usual conditions and 63 special that they're supposed to keep up with, and they're actually talking about hiring a wetland scientist to oversee the entire project. So right now they're shut down. I think they plan on attending the next conservation meeting on the 11th.
Wednesday, yeah.
So more to come from that meeting. School building committee met, as was already mentioned by Tom, that they do meet on the 4th Monday of every month. Tom went over the public forums. I encourage people to attend those. Also, he went over some of the HVAC system selection, some of the other workshops, traffic studies that are happening throughout September. All those dates are on the website for the building committee. I'd just call out the key milestones. They are in the schematic design phase right now. I think on 11/7 is when we should get estimates of what the plans cost and look like. Floor plans already being developed, both from the building perspective as well as the footprint of the property. And then they need to submit to DESE, Department of Secondary Education, and the MSBA, their final schematic design submission on 12/20. So some important dates coming up for that by the end of the year. HDC, they're looking to get in front of us, Joe. You've seen some of the emails I have. I know they're looking for some FY26 capital. Also, they're just letting us know the Lamson oil property is on the market, but primarily they want to get on the in front of us about 2.5 million in capital for next year. So we'll try to get them in front of us to just discuss that and some other items. CPC canceled their meeting for this month. I guess we took all the money, so that's it.
Perfect, thank you. I just have a couple of administrative things. So obviously, thanks to everyone who helped the election last Tuesday go off well. We had a good turnout here in town. We can always have a better turnout, though, so go to your local elections. But one thing that came out of that election was multiple people showed up to vote 3A, and then they said they'd be back in November to vote 3A. So a reminder that anybody's listening that the 3A vote is not a ballot vote. It is a town meeting vote, and it will happen in April at town meeting. So for folks that keep showing up thinking that it's on the ballot for the state elections or federal elections, it is not on that ballot. It is a town meeting vote, and it will take place in April. That doesn't mean you shouldn't show up to the other ones, but there was a substantial number of people who showed up to vote on 3A. So we don't even have a plan for 3A yet, so there's no voting on it, but that will be in April. So with that, Alderman Jill.
Just want to make one, one quick announcement. We'll be talking about it later tonight. Sorry, my voice. We'll be talking about the town hall project and the decarbonization project, but the town was awarded the maximum $500,000 grant from Green Communities for the town hall project. So
Nice.
that'll be a big part of the financing for the decarbonization project. Bill and Christian, who are here today from ESG Online, they will speak to that when we get to them. But wanted to announce that up front so that people don't miss it. Thank you to Vicky and Bill and Christian for the work they did on the grant application. Vicky Missoni.
All right, we will move to public comment. As a reminder, anybody here or online, 3 minutes on anything not on the agenda. If you have comments about something on the agenda, please hold your comments until the agenda item comes up. Anybody online have any public comments?
Don't see anybody raising their hand online.
I see no hands in the room.
Tosh Blake, Sagamore Street. I recently watched video of the Select Board workshop held on July 29th, and it's actually surprised to hear my name come up. I admit it's flattering to think I'm living in some of y'all's heads rent-free, but I would also like to seriously address some of the concerns brought up in that meeting, specifically in regard to matters of conduct of the public, as well as related conduct of a member of the Select Board, particularly related regarding heated discussions about 3A zoning that have been going on in town recently. Chair Caroline Bulio, in the recent workshop that was held on the 29th, complained that I had advised her in a previous community meeting not to use, in her words, quote, triggering language, unquote. She maybe thought I was trying to police some speech or something. I didn't use that phrase, triggering language, but the sentiment from me was friendly advice not to repeat insulting misinformation that 3A zoning is only a change in zoning. It doesn't mean anything will be built. That's a phrase we've heard multiple times from multiple people, especially with pro-development interests in town. At first, I thought at that meeting, when she said it to the crowd, she said that unwittingly, not expecting hostility. But now I believe Caroline said it to provoke the crowd, and this is why. At the recent Select Board workshop, Rosemary Kennedy politely attempted on 3 different occasions to explain to Caroline that false talking point is highly offensive. In Rosemary's words, that talking point is, quote, unfair and, quote, disingenuous, basically calling it a lie. I agree. Instead of taking Rosemary's advice seriously, Caroline doubled and tripled down on it by claiming the phrase to be technically true. Well, if zoning laws can lead to real-life impact, which we all know it can and will, don't insult us by saying it's only a zoning change. Unless, of course, your intent is to derail a meeting or presentation. As a side note, when Caroline complained in the workshop about my objection to her language in the committee forum, she implied I, along with some in the crowd, was also shouting down and calling town officials names. I did no such thing. Others may have done so, and I certainly don't endorse that behavior, and was in fact, on occasion, trying to calm some of the more heated people in my vicinity. In my opinion, and given evidence of Caroline's conduct in public, is she may not have the right temperament to serve as chair of the select board, given the position's importance in communicating directly to the public. Thank you.
Would somebody else like the role?
I think you did a fantastic job.
I'm happy to step down.
I think you did a great job.
I'd take any opportunity, in fact. No? Okay. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. We have 2 items on the consent agenda. We have a request for electronic signboard from the Friends of the Hamilton Wenham Library, as well as approval of the minutes of the July 29th, 2024 Select Board Workshop. I will entertain a motion, and then I do want to hear more about the signboard.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Awesome. What is the signboard?
Typically, we haven't put things on the signboard that weren't directly sponsored by the town. We had some discussion about that. There was, in the past, I think, the use of the signboard for the Military History Day out at Patton Homestead, and some folks asked us not to do that. So when the Friends of the Hamilton Wenham Library asked for the board, I thought it was best to bring it to the board and let you make that decision.
So is this to put up a signboard?
No, we have a signboard. They want to put a notice of their fundraiser. It's for the annual book sale. Fall book sale.
Oh, they want to use the signboard that's
They want us to put a notice about the fall book sale.
at the
on there.
COA, or
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
got it,
for
sorry.
the public safety building, yep.
I was going to say, don't they have the physical signs that they put up?
They have used those in the past.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I don't, the request came through, I didn't know why
Yeah.
they asked for it, but I put it in front of you because it
Yeah.
came in kind of last minute, so.
So we're going to discuss that a little bit?
So we can, if we want to.
You can pull it out of
Yeah,
consent?
you can remove it from the consent agenda, so we can amend the motion to just be approval of minutes.
Yes, I would like to amend the motion so that we're just approving the minutes of the July 29th Select Board meeting.
Okay? Do I have a second?
Second?
All right, any discussion about the minutes of the workshop? All right,
Vote on the minutes?
that's what we're gonna vote on the minutes right now. Tom, I'll go to you first, online.
Tom Myers, aye.
Bill at the end,
Well, we also just abstained because I was not at that meeting, so.
right? Rosie,
Yes.
awesome.
Bill Wilson, yes.
Caroline Beaulieu, yes. So we can now pull the request for electronic signboard out separately as sort of the 0 agenda item. So do we want to make a motion, or do you just want to discuss it?
Make a
first?
motion to let the Friends of the Library use the electronic signboard in front of the fire station for an announcement about their fundraiser.
Awesome. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Bill Wilson. All right, Rosie, do you have questions, comments, or concerns?
Well, I think that we had said that we were going to only allow issues that were directly related to the town on the electronic signboard. So that's the first part of it, and the other part is the library is part of Hamilton Wenham, but are the Friends of the Hamilton Wenham Library.
Friends are not, they're a separate nonprofit
Okay.
organization.
So, okay, they're a separate nonprofit. So, okay, so under those circumstances, I think that the signage that's put up around town, not directly endorsed by the town, because this is not a town entity who is asking for the advertisement. I certainly love the library, I love what they do, but I think we need to set some boundaries on that electronic board, and we have decided that we're going to stick to town entities, and for that reason only, I would not be in favor of that.
Does the Friends of the Library work on behalf of or raise money for anything other than the interests aligned with the Hamilton Wenham Library?
Not to my knowledge. My understanding is they raise funds, they do volunteer work here at the library, and then they donate the funds to the Board of Library Trustees to be expended on things here in the library.
I'm just wondering, like,
At
if
the
the
direction
Friends of
of
the COA asked the same thing on behalf of a fundraiser for the COA, I wouldn't want to say no to them.
But they're also not directly affiliated with the COA. And you know how I feel about the COA.
Yeah, no, but
Yeah.
how is it different? I guess that's what I don't understand. The Friends of is not the COA, it's a,
She's saying she wouldn't, right?
oh, you wouldn't support it if it was the Friends of the
No,
COA?
because they're a separate entity. They're not a direct town affiliation. They're a separate 503.
But only because they have to be in order to legally raise money on behalf of that entity. Like, right, it's a tax shelter in order to be able to raise money for town groups?
Yeah, but I guess that's where I sit, right? So I totally get where Rosie is sitting.
Yeah.
And it's like, we don't have, once again, don't have a policy. We have a discussion, but not a policy. And I feel like, yeah, because they solely support Hamilton, Wenham causes and finances, I'm never gonna, people always complain about not getting the message out. Last thing I wanna do is say no to not getting the message out. So I'm caught between the fact we don't have a policy on it, but because they're a group that's solely focused on raising money for Hamilton, Wenham, I get it's not a, but they're supporting our entity of the library, not supporting some book club that meets, in like, Topsfield, so.
Right, I mean, I think that's the camp I'm in as well. I think certainly, I look at those boards as community information. I get a lot as I drive through Wenham and Hamilton.
That's what
I
I'm
look at
saying,
those
no,
boards
right.
and I know where you're coming from as well, Rosemary. And I think if we have, certainly any direct board or committee, but if it's a friends of one of those boards and clearly in, like they should provide a paragraph or bullets of what's being done. This is clearly in support of the library, so which is a general cause for everybody in the community, right? I mean, the library has things for everybody. It's not specific to any political or certain cause. I would be in favor of that. I think same with the park, any programs that we're doing, or, that's Hamilton Wenham, I think, is that okay? Like
Concert in the
sign
park,
up
right?
for
Concert in the park kind of thing.
concerts in the parks, or even with the schools. I mean, I think like open houses, I think that's a way in which we talk about communication as being one of our
Right.
biggest
We-
deficits,
yeah.
and I think
My point, yeah.
I get a lot from that. And I would ask Joe, though, is there a constant flow of new information, or would you say it has room for more content?
I think these types of things tend to be temporary. They're only asking for it for
Yeah.
a period of a week or so that they can promote the book sale, which will ultimately benefit the library. So, I mean, it's not the type of thing where we wouldn't have room to run it on there.
Right.
if
I guess
if
I
you're
would,
asking about room.
I guess I would amend the motion to, maybe, if it's okay, amend the motion to say, limited to a week and limited to just title of the event and the dates of the event. And not have it be a bunch of, it doesn't need to be a description, doesn't need to have any sort of what the money's for, just say Hamilton Wenham book sale on September 12th, 21st, 23rd, 24th or something, so limit it to just for a week. But I agree, I hate to say no to information for community-focused events.
Right, it's not like they don't have any other avenue for advertising. And the last time we had this discussion about this, it was seen as that electronic board, first of all, would be used for specifically town-supported events, and by having it on, having people put their events onto that electronic board, the presumption is that it is endorsed by the town. So I think we should understand clearly what we're saying. And then when the next nonprofit comes along and says, oh, well, this is a town nonprofit, so we think that it should be allowed. And there was a lot of resident pushback about the Pride Day picnic, and that was when we had this very discussion. So how do we decide if something is endorsed by the town because the electronic board is put on by the town? How do we decide between information and endorsing something?
I guess I think about like the Friends of Winthrop or Friends of Bucher or Friends of Cutler putting up, the ski sale or the carnival or the things like that. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get to a place where we're suddenly saying that none of those things are allowed to go up because they're not products of the school. They're they're products of the Friends of asking for. And I understand like the sort of what you're talking about, slippery slope, but by the definition that we're using, the Hamilton Wyndham picnic would not have gone up because it was right? It was the 501, it was the other group that wasn't a Friends of or wasn't a group that asked for it, and that was,
Right, there were two miscommunications.
Yeah, we later learned that-
One never got, number two, the town didn't actually write a check for anything. Like,
No, of course they
Right.
didn't,
We
but
didn't
somehow
fund
we
it.
ended up as being
I get it, because
supporters.
they used the.
I don't connect the two, though, but I agree with you on that.
Right.
And I do get I'm bridging something a little bit, so I do kind of take a little pause. But this clearly, so we'll have the library put it up. Hey, we're having but I think any, facility, I look at this town, at the library as the town's asset, basically.
agree.
And everybody wants to use and the library, and, why wouldn't we? I would endorse this 100 times over. But I get what you're saying, because then when do you stop the next person?
Well, then,
But could we draw the line and we say, if it's a friends group and we list the friends group, we must know who they are. And they support the park, and they support the COA, and they support the library, and they support the schools if we really want to put other stuff in there. Just so people know, hey, this is happening on the 10th, I'm gonna be there.
I mean, we also have the right unequivocally to say no if someone asks, like,
But we don't always get everything.
Right.
Because Joe, we're gonna get
Well,
leaving
I
Joe's
mean,
in. Like, we
you're
could.
getting it from now on.
Good, but we wanna only bring exceptions, so like I'm
giving
saying,
you another
I would
thing.
amend and say, any group or friends of a group that is presenting, promoting an event for the entire community. I know.
that's
I'm
an
mincing.
official town entity, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
like the COA, like the library, we could even name it.
Okay.
Yeah.
then- Okay, so we've had this
schools
nice
and the park.
discussion, we've clarified, I feel comfortable.
Deb, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that the Friends of, when I brought this up to show like all the advertisers for that, there were Friends of Patton, Friends of the Library, the Patton Homestead Cultural Center. These were all entities that when I said, the town is sponsoring these, it was pushed back saying, no, those are actually separate entities, so we don't have control over them, including the library, which was sponsoring an event and hosting an event, and our tax dollars do fund them.
Yeah, but I
So
think
it
we're
is an
saying in
important.
This scenario, that if the Friends of Patton asked to put up an event that was happening at Patton, we're saying that's a yes. But the Friends of Patton didn't ask for anything with the Pride picnic. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't a Friends of group that was asking on behalf of their group.
Yeah, it's the concept of clarifying, I'm just sort of taking a higher level, it's the concept of clarifying, like, are Friends of, as 501c3s, are they actually town entities? And when I asked that about their participation here, you're like, no, we don't have any control over them. So if we don't have any control over them, then do they have the right to be on the fireman's board? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think that clarity with the rooms, with the land, with the advertising, just so that there's really clear consistency and rules. I would just encourage you, just because I think it's important, like, what do we have control over and what do we not as a town?
Thank you.
Right, so I think if we just list like those entities I mentioned, I think that's clean. I think they're clean. I mean, who knows if the Friends of the Library and everyone else knew they were gonna be on that sheet, Deb, right? I mean, we didn't know it.
They were hosting an event.
Right, but I mean, and they got put on it, so I think that's I think when you're talking about the homestead that gets rented out, that's a little bit of a different story. We've gotta be tight on that, but we don't wanna penalize a friends group from helping
Raising
the
money
very,
that's
the
raising
very
money to write a
group that
check to give it back to the
helps
town.
minimize the taxes and
That
provides
seems
content.
anti,
Right.
yeah, productive of
Well,
what we're
I
trying to do.
think the issue is, honestly, I brought this up because I thought it was important to have a broader discussion about this and help us to clarify what's appropriate on the town electronic board and what isn't. And this discussion has helped to clarify that a little
Agree.
bit.
I think,
So,
yep.
All right, so do we have is there a motion sitting?
There's
Okay.
there's a motion,
Are we,
and made and seconded,
I
so.
was gonna amend the motion to say approve it to go up for a week and limit it to
Right.
subject
Time
matter
and
and
dates.
time and date.
okay. So all in favor, Tom Myers, starting with you.
Somebody has to second my amendment.
Oh, sorry.
Second,
Bill
Sorry.
did, Bill Wilson did.
Bill, yeah.
Bill.
Tom,
Tom Myers, yes.
Bill down there.
William Olson, aye.
Rosie.
aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Bowe, aye. The ayes have it.
So Joe, there's no official policy we should make, but I think the direction we gave you is that if it's a town, don't bring it to us
Unless it's not, if it's a town department or board or committee,
or friends.
I'm authorized to do it, and if not, I'm bringing it to you. That's why it's here.
Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Next up is an appointment of Ken Wilson to the Hamilton Foundation. I believe Ken is here. Is that a true?
I am.
Hello, Ken. Thanks for joining us. I am happy to entertain a motion to approve Ken, and then we can discuss it.
I make a motion that we approve the appointment of Ken Wilson to the Hamilton Foundation.
Second?
A second by Bill. All right. Ken, would you like to tell us about yourself? Would you like the spotlight on you for a moment?
Not really. I've been a resident here for 30 some odd years, and I respect what the Hamilton Foundation does. And I've known Heather Ford for a long time, who has a certain way of discussing and putting pressure on that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. But I have the time now, and I feel that the foundation is important, and they had an open vacancy that they needed to fill. So I agreed to accept that.
Oh, I love that. Does anybody have any questions or comments or concerns
No,
for
Heather's,
Ken?
Heather's memo said it all, so
Yeah.
it was very well written, and I support her recommendation.
Yeah, totally agree. I think Heather's word is solid gold as far as I'm concerned. The Hamilton Foundation does great work. I know that they're very discreet, very careful, and I know that, knowing Heather, I don't think she would advocate for Ken Wilson unless she felt him to be a worthy candidate, so.
Absolutely.
No,
love a
Uncle
doer.
Ken is, no, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Careful.
No, I appreciate it. No, no relation. Appreciate you volunteering and stepping up. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With no further ado, Tom Myers.
Tom Myers, aye.
William Wilson, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye. Ken, I'll tell you what to tell everybody. You're not going to hurt our feelings when you hang up. You're welcome to stay. We'd love to
Well, I
have
do have
you.
to have dinner, so I've been waiting for that. So
Yeah,
thank you very
sorry to
much.
keep you waiting. We had robust signage conversation.
Yeah, I understand. I listened to it.
But feel free to leave. We have thick skin.
No, no
Enjoy your
problem.
dinner.
I will probably sign off, but thank you all very much.
Of course. Thank you. All right, next up, set age, income, and asset limits for Chapter 91 program with Principal Assessor Todd Laramie.
Unfortunately, Todd's not here. I apologize for that.
Do we
But-
table or do we move? Or
No,
do
you don't need him here. This is an annual vote you guys take to update the limits based on changing factors. And the sheet that in front of you is from the assessor. You can table if you like, but you don't
This
have to.
sheet?
It's a pretty typical thing we do, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the same thing, vote you've taken every year for the last several years.
So the ask is age 65 as of July 1st, but we're asking to increase it to 70.
So you just have to vote to set the age limit. You can be 65 or you can increase it to 70. The household income for a single is $47,520. For a married couple, it's $71,280. And total household assets of $175,000 for a single person or $250,000 for a married couple. So you just need to decide which of the ages you want to be the limit, but
So what is it currently, and has it been that for a long period?
I believe it's been 65 steadily for quite some time.
So between 65 and 70 seems, those are only two options. Isn't the age for Medicare 66? Could we think about increasing it to the Medicare age? Or not,
I think the main reason for increasing the age would be if you thought that the program was in danger of overspending its funds, and therefore you wanted to limit the pool of people that would be able to take advantage of it. So it's not as much related to their age as just changing the demographic of people who could apply.
How is the health of the funds in the program?
I think that the assessors feel comfortable that you could say it's 65 for this year.
okay.
Yeah, I don't know that we need to limit our senior programming.
Yeah, so right now it's 65, it's 47,520, so it's the same as this was, so it didn't change. So it hasn't changed. The household asset wasn't in here, but
This program has been here since 2021, is that right?
I think it's longer than that. We made some changes to the law at the special town meeting in 2021, but there had, to the special, because it was a special act, but we haven't, it's been around since before that. So they had made some adjustments to make it more meaningful at the time, that's all.
Yeah,
we haven't changed these things since 2018. Since 2018, it's been 65 and $47,520. So if it ain't broke,
Don't fix it.
yeah. And there's not an issue with funding for it, so good.
Yeah, my only question is, so, I mean, considering a 2.5% year-over-year inflation, or on average for the last 5 years, you'd be looking at like closer to 4 or 5. The fact that 47 hasn't changed in 5 years and neither has 71, I'm not saying we open this can of worms today, but to keep pace with inflation, both of those numbers should have gone up on average 2.5% a year. Which,
it's the state dictates that, I think, but I'm not sure.
Is this a state dictated number, or was this something
Not
we
sure.
voted on?
That's interesting.
We use this, we use the numbers that state uses, and then we ask you to vote on them, so.
okay.
The state dictates.
So we're
it.
not, are we certain that these are the latest state numbers, or?
Jane submitted it to us, so I know Jane pays close attention to this program.
So I would move that we approve the senior exemption program at the existing 65-year age and the outlined incomes and asset levels.
Second.
Tom,
Myers, aye.
Bill at the end.
William Wilson, aye, sorry.
He's applying.
That's weird. It does say 65 or 70, not 65 to 70, which is weird.
Right, I know.
That's why I was
Yeah,
confused.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Rosie?
Yes, Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye. All right, well done. Sorry.
No problem.
All right, next we have a presentation from ESG to give us the overview of the decarbonization project at Town Hall. I believe we have folks with us on,
At the recommendation of
Christian
FinCom.
Michelle and Bill Garbati. This is just to make sure that the board and the folks watching at home understand the program and what's being proposed out there.
Great, thanks, Joe. Thanks, board. It's good to see you again. We presented this last year as we were developing this, and very excited to be part of the first net zero decarbonized historic town hall in Massachusetts. I have 3 slides here to talk to you about. One is basically the scope and what's going into the project, how it interacts with the capital project, where the funding sources are coming from, and then a cash flow slide. I have my colleague, Christian Michelle, who's the lead development engineer on the project as well, to answer any technical questions that you may have. So with that, Joe, first slide. So basically, there are 5 key energy systems that we focused on. This project is happening simultaneously with the renovation project, but ESG will be taking care of a brand new geothermal heating and cooling system. That will be 2 standing column wells out in the parking lot behind Town Hall in Public Works. That will be piped into the underground into Town Hall to a VRF, variable refrigerant flow system, to distribute that throughout Town Hall. There'll be a new building management system to support that. There'll be a new energy recovery ventilation system to meet code, but do it in a very efficient way to save the heating and cooling, not let it go right out the window. Advanced network lighting, which will be both aesthetically and functionally pleasing to the users. And then DPW roof, the new roof will be hosting a.
Are you not gonna have the omelet?
Sorry?
I'm not having, you can have the omelet. I don't feel like omelet.
And if you could mute, we got you, never mind. Okay.
Got it. Sorry about that.
What kind?
We would,
I was wondering if someone thought there was an omelet somehow in our program, but solar. So solar was, there's going to be about a 50 kW solar system that's going to be put on that roof and fed underground into Town Hall as well. So that helps create the net zero, right? So now we're decarbonizing by eliminating the gas. Everything's all electric. And then we're making the power throughout the year with the solar system to cover that need. That energy project was procured through the Chapter 25A and the capital projects, the 149. You know, one key thing to know, I know that the town didn't want to have what happened at the safety building where some of those energy systems of value engineered out when the costs were coming in high on that project. So by separating this project can just stand alone, and basically we'll show you on the next slide how the funding and then the cash flow basically pays for itself. So we're not asking for new money for these systems from town residents. There would be a tax exempt lease, a municipal lease to support the project. It's a 20-year lease, currently at 4.99%. Maybe it's going to come off just a little bit by the time we close. A big part of the $1.33 million is covered through a Green Communities Decarbonization Grant, $500,000. The Green Communities just started giving those out in the past year. There was only 2 awarded in the spring round throughout the state, and we were able to get one of them for this project. And they thought it was a very exciting and really good project because it touched on a lot of things that I had mentioned earlier, not just a heat pump. The federal funding to support the project, the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, allowed for what used to be the investment tax credits that went for like solar and geothermal to be paid as direct pay grants to municipalities and nonprofits. So about $270,000 is going to be covered to help support the geothermal and that solar. Mass Saves for their share, that's the utility rebate program, has already committed to $152,000 for the project. And then the Massachusetts Smart Solar Program is going to kick in an annual incentive of almost $2,700 a year, or over $50K over the 20-year term. And then there was another grant that was supporting the energy manager to support the OPM, the project manager services for the overall project in general, both components. So annual savings, energy savings, is about $26,000. And that's also baseline of what a renovated town hall basic to code would have been. And additionally, there's over $6,000 in annual O&M savings, maintenance that you don't have to do, repairs on the building that you've been experiencing over the last several years because of the aging equipment. So you basically took care of that deferred maintenance. And then the last slide is sort of the cash flow model. It can be complex. You may not be able to read it. But basically it just shows how the project is budget neutral and pays for itself with all those grants and rebates, which is about 2/3 of the project, and then the rest is paid from the savings over the 20-year term. Any questions?
Bill, the FinCom wants us to ask you about the guarantee in the contract.
Okay, so we Energy Systems Group does guarantee the savings. This program, you know, that's a key part of the program. And with these decarbonization projects, you know, a lot of these projects have to be supported with these grants because there's just only so much energy that the building uses. So we are leveraging all those savings to pay the delta off that 1/3 of the cost to you. We have built into the project the first 2 years of measurement and verification. And that would help us to go through those numbers each year with you and show you how you've saved. And then it would be up to the towns if they wanted to continue that, for up to the 20-year term to cover that. Most of these projects, though, after a couple of years of proving out the savings, the cost of the exercise isn't necessarily worth the effort, given where they're at and what they've already achieved.
So what year is the guaranteed triggered?
The guarantee is every year. So it's an annual guarantee.
Oh, okay, so it sort of amortizes the guaranteed and you pay it out.
We pay it up,
Wait.
yeah.
Got it, okay. Cool.
So does this say it, in year 20, it generates a profit for the town in some way?
Yeah, so that's, as that year rolls off, there's some savings, and then after that, all the savings is to you because you won't be paying that tax exempt lease purchase agreement anymore.
Right.
Yeah, there's a small net positive in year 20.
And then are there like maintenance or upgrades that have to take place at that point, or is there some sort of degradation of the system?
Christian, I'll start if there's something else. But so on the solar, we already factored in, the panels degrade about 0.5% a year, so that's already factored into that. Most solar panels and those things have a 25 to 30-year life. Same with the energy systems that we're putting in. So there's not any expected immediate shortfall from that. But over time, as your buildings age, you'll have to tend to those deferred maintenance needs.
Okay, so there needs to be some sort of capital plan for that 25-year mark when we have to replace the panels.
Similar to how you put together your capital plans now.
Okay.
So as we get to the end of the lease and, 15 years with this 5 years left, we'll be paying out on the municipal lease. We can start to plan to take what we would normally be paying the lease and put it into the capital so that we could build a fund to be able to address maintenance issues or replacement costs.
There's your profit.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what would the cost be roughly to replace the panels? Any idea?
I mean, it's 20 years from now. I mean, we could hazard a guess what it
What would
costs
the
now,
cost
but it would be.
Now, so
Bill or Christian, can you give us an answer to what would replacement cost of the panels would be now in current dollars?
I mean, if it's the same as the rate of inflation on the senior tax exemption, nothing.
So it's an interesting question. The real answer is what you mentioned, Joe, is that we don't know. I don't, maybe the thing in 20 years will be micro nuclear power plants or something, I don't know. But could I tell you the replacement cost of the modules in today's dollars?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we could put that number together. Yeah, because it's, the module costs are about 1/3 to 40% of the actual installed cost of the measure. A lot of it is labor. So yeah, I mean, I could give you that number.
So like $500,000.
So the solar is one of the components of the overall project. So there's the geothermal, the building management system, the solar, the lighting, the receptacle controls. So it's going to be a piece of that. So in the Green Communities Grant submission and in the IGA report, the investment grade audit report that we've provided, we do have the breakout of the of all the costs per measure. So I can get you what the expected module replacement cost would be in today's dollars. Yeah.
I have no idea what.
If you could break that out, Christian, and send that to me in an email, I'll share it with the board.
Sure, we can do that.
So that's for the degradation, but did you ask, maybe I missed it, if something were to break and needs to be fixed from a panel or a module on the roof, is that the town's cost, or is that some type of warranty on the panels? Does that
Sure.
happen?
So there will be two warranties on the project. At substantial completion of the overall project, there will be a 1-year parts and material warranty on everything that we install. That will be an ESG warranty. So beyond that, any manufacturer's warranties on the installed equipment would be transferred to the town as part of closeout of the project. So whatever would be covered by the manufacturer, those warranties would transfer to you.
Got it.
And then what about having two contractors work on the project at the same time, Joe? How does that get contractually written? Is that gonna be an obstacle
We've
or
actually
not?
they've been working together on that since, March or April.
Okay.
They've had several meetings already. The GC will be managing the whole site, but they understand the ESG's role in getting the decarbonization component. They will understand getting that done.
There won't be any contractual obstacles to this.
No, they've already worked it out with the architects.
Okay.
And
So
it was explained in the bid documents.
Yeah. I won't get into too much detail on it because it would take hours. But we're very used to implementing this kind of project where you are almost a bolt-on top of a capital project. So this is something we do frequently, and the project manager, the construction project manager we've assigned to this project does this specifically on a day-to-day basis. So he understands how communication is going to be with the 149 project GC in terms of getting our milestones and procurement lead times and installation times baked into the overall project schedule. So that the way we do this seamlessly is just through a lot of excessive communication. So that's what we're planning to do. We have streamlined it up to now by, as Joe said, we engaged the town's architect, LLB, and their engineer, BER, to do the mechanical design for our portion, just to make things simpler. And the mechanical sub on the 149 project we're also using as our mechanical sub just to facilitate. So in progress, I would say already.
This piece I do, yeah.
It sounds like,
There's no vote needed.
Deb, did you have questions?
I just had a question. I'm just curious about this. So, excuse me for not being an expert on it. I'm just curious. So the solar panels are doing the electricity for the town hall, and then the geothermal is the heating and cooling. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Exclusively. And so I think geothermal is relatively a new thing. Is that right? Or how much, like as a process, how much experience?
It's been around for a while, but it's been expensive to do.
Okay.
It's not a new science, it's become more efficient to figure out how to do it. But they've
So,
been doing it
so
for a long time.
is there a track record in the efficiency of it and the longevity of it as a system that compares to HVAC and that kind of thing, just from a maintenance? Because it's a whole new
There's
investment.
no moving parts. It's just
It's just sending the air down or the water down?
Nothing can break. It's a beautiful system, right? So you can get down that far and get the delta temperature.
So the theory then is that that system has a long life cycle, would you say? And then the solar panels is like 15 or 20 years. I think so that's like a cost. I'm just wondering about the geothermal part of it, like what that,
Yeah,
the cost
It's a great
history
question
is.
for them to
Yeah,
answer. But
thanks.
So Deb, I'll tell you, I had some friends who put in geothermal maybe 20 years ago, and it was pretty hefty. I think for them and just a house, it was $50,000. But it has been consistently working well for them. So that's my sort of faith.
Being in a swamp area or having radon gases, or there's no other sort of other side effects from it?
we should ask the experts.
Christian?
So
What was the question? We couldn't hear it.
There's a few questions there. Yeah, so I'll do my best, and let me know if I'm getting too far off topic. So at a high level, what the GEO is doing is a ground exchange with groundwater. So we are drilling two 900-foot wells on the rear of the town hall. There will be well pumps that are basically pumping water down into those wells and drawing it back out. The beautiful thing about groundwater is that it stays at a relatively consistent temperature all year long. So as long as you have wells that are deep enough and far enough apart, you get very good temperature exchange between the building and the ground, so you have a pretty consistent return water temperature from your wells. So the well water is what the two heat pumps in the basement are going to use as a heat sink. So, I mean, none of this is really new technology. I think there's more focus on it now because there are a lot of incentives and rebates at play now, and electrification is becoming a big thing now, and this is a way to enable that. So, I mean, fundamentally, it doesn't really function any differently than any other heat pump technology. It's just, it's using groundwater as a heat sink, basically. So, I forget what some of the other questions were. No, there's no chemicals or anything in use. It's an open loop system, so it's groundwater. So if we were talking about a closed loop system and we had glycol, then there would be some additives, but we're not there for this building. It's an open loop system. I think did I cover everything?
Yep, thank you, Christian.
Just John McGrath from FinCom. Christian came in a couple of weeks back and spoke to us. We had some of the similar questions, and we were, to the extent our knowledge was adding to the conversation, was probably limited. But what we did look at was the total project is going to cost $1.8 million. All right, but the grants and the rebates and the incentives are almost $1 million. So from the town's standpoint, standing this project up with risks, it really is going to, add about $1 million worth of value to the town, free of charge. Of course, the town is going to be on the hook to maintain the equipment. The technology, from what we heard, was not groundbreaking or risky. So we spent some time, and to the extent we could unearth any significant risk, we didn't find any. Now, I'm sure when we get to town meeting, folks may have similar questions, and we're certainly happy to field all those. But, what we're looking to do is any opportunity we can to generate some value tax-free for the town. This project certainly does it, but there are certain risks. And Bill, to your question about having two projects running at the same time, the reason we're having a town meeting was really the construction bid, which was, $2 million higher than what we went with a year ago. They came back in at $7.4 million for the construction, for the preservation side, but we've got a 10% contingency on top of that, so it's $750,000. So the comments that the FinCom made relative to this project are, this is an old building. And I've been advised that once you start cracking open a building like this, you're not quite sure what you might find behind the walls. For instance, there's a concern about maybe the vapor barrier, but there are going to be issues. But there's $750,000 contingency there that probably will be consumed in its entirety, but that will round out, the full value. So we think this adds a lot of value to the building and to the town. So. But it's not without risks. So anyway, that's the only thing I'd add.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for? Is it a separate? Can you come up to the microphone so that they can hear, please?
Sorry, I just, you mentioned the town meeting. So is there a separate vote that's going to be addressing the geothermal, like approving it as a project? Or is it already approved?
That aspect of the project was essentially approved by town meeting when they voted to allow us to move forward in this way last year.
Okay.
There's no aspect of the decarbonization project that needs to be voted by town meeting, but the funding for the preservation project has to be voted at town meeting. The select board has the authorization under state law to enter into the contract with ESG that will take care of the decarb project, so.
Right, so you're just saying sort of as a collateral for the meeting that we're having in September, there might be some collateral discussion, as opposed to there being like a line, something that's being voted in on in September. That's what I was
Yeah,
curious
right.
about.
There's
Okay.
no need for a vote on that.
The FinCom spent a fair amount of time explaining the whole project, what the recommendations, so we went into a lot of detail to explain what's going on. So feel free to ask questions.
So more out of curiosity, there must be pumps, right? Will the solar panels run the pumps that move the water? And I'm curious, is that cost typically higher than a traditional heating system? Does that make sense?
So trying to think out the best way to answer. So what's happening here is we are removing natural gas service to the building and replacing it with an electric heat pump system. So electricity on a per BTU basis costs about 10 times more than the natural gas commodity. So I think that kind of gets at your second question. So like if we did this standalone with no on-site generation, yes, you are paying more for heating and cooling for your building. But the 50 kW worth of solar we're putting on the flat roof on the DPW building is offsetting, it's about 90% of the load of the building, and that includes the additional power required for the well pumps and the heat pump compressors and the VRF fan coil units. So it's not net zero technically. You're almost there though. You're kind of what I would call like near net zero electric use.
And that cost is in your cash flow savings? Did you assume higher that would be saving because that would have been higher down the road? Is that in your cash flow here?
Yes, so the amount of savings that's shown in the cash flow is just, that's the net, basically. So that would not include, with the 10% that you'll still be paying to National Grid.
Okay. This is good. And it'll provide electricity to those fuel tanks in the back, right?
Yep.
How about the car chargers?
I'm not sure. The car charge, is the 2 car chargers at the town hall served by this now, too? Or is that still gonna stay separate?
I think that's on a different meter.
It might be on a different meter.
I can double check.
Okay,
I think that has its own service because of the voltage required.
right.
Bill Bowler, quick question. So I think I heard Mr. Michelle say that it's essentially net zero because we're going to save money on the solar panels, but that standalone, the heat pump is more costly than a standard system. So if we went with the solar panels and a standard system, I guess gas, wouldn't we save money, be below net zero, or am I missing something?
We wouldn't get to net zero because we'd still be using gas. We're going away from fossil fuels.
But I'm focusing on the dollars.
We wouldn't get the grants.
We wouldn't have got the 500 or the rebates.
We wouldn't have got the rebates from National Grid
So
or the grants.
your yearly utility bill might be less, but you would have to work off the $500,000 free grant.
Well, this moderator doesn't have opinions, but I'd like a lower utility bill, so that's the. So I guess I'm trying to drive at, are we getting the lowest cost by doing it this way?
Yes, because the solar panels are gonna provide all our electricity. So we're not gonna we're not gonna use any gas. And the solar panels are gonna provide almost all of our electricity. So we're gonna be using less from the grid, and we use no gas. So all of that represents savings to us that we turn around and use to pay the municipal lease. So it doesn't cost us any new money at all.
Okay.
All right, any additional questions for our friends on the line? All right, grateful to you both for coming and talking with us. As I told Mr. Wilson, no hard feelings when you hang up on us, but you're also welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. But feel free to drop off if you too have dinner waiting for you.
Thank you all. Hey, Joe, I did have a question. Number 7, is that going to be kind of, we talking about how the town meeting's going to go, or should we stay on for that?
Number 7 is just identifying who will move motions in the script for town meeting.
All right, then. We'll jump off. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
For the rest of your meeting.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. The next item is the
Approve use of.
approving the use of perpetual care funds for a new Walker mower. There's a letter in there from Tim in the packet that outlines the ask and the cost. And I really appreciated in his email where he said, I believe we have the funding, and if that's true, can I please have it? So.
And we do. Wendy also provided an email identifying the amount that's in the perpetual care fund. It's currently $337,308. The cost of the mower is
$12,491.50.
Thank you. That's really getting hard for me to talk.
Yeah. Save yourself. So I would entertain a motion to approve the funds, and then we can have a conversation.
So moved.
Joe, do you want a golf drum?
Would you like a second?
Second?
So, I don't know.
A second from Rosemary. All right. Tim is very good at only asking for things that he needs, and we've argued with him about things that he's needed in the past. But I know that we actually had a conversation 2 years ago when the blowers came up, and it was brought up that we were going to be needing additional lawnmowers. And we had asked him then to make sure that he was doing, not necessarily price, low price shopping, but making sure that the, where he was going was providing the best value for the dollar. And I think at the time he was looking at 2 or 3 different places. And he has included the estimate here for transparency. So anybody have any questions about the approval of the funds?
Just my question is this one of those mowers where you stand on the back and you zip around? I don't know exactly what kind of mower this is. It seems like a lot of money. So I'm just wondering if
It's a commercial grade mower that's gonna mow all the grass at the cemetery. It's not a rider, it's a standard board, but I do think it's one that you can stand on top of. I don't think it's one you have to push.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would,
I had similar questions when the leaf blower was greater than $10,000. I know, and was told the same thing. We've also revisited the electric versus gas-powered conversation. Obviously, the costs associated with the cost and longevity associated with gas right now is still better. But namely, from what I understand from Tim, is that the lithium-ion battery technology is not, at this point, as a place where we wouldn't need multiples, or we wouldn't have to be charging all the time in order to maintain it. I have been a thorn in his side about this, and he has said that, like, it's a matter of you'd have to have twice as many people with double the equipment to get as much time out of an electric as you would a gas. And we get 4 to 6 years out of each of them. Is that true?
I would say that that's what they expect. I think we do better than that. We have a very good mechanic who also works in small engines, and, excuse me, the one that, we're buying this one to replace one that's well-used.
Okay. But the good news is that as they go out, we do have this conversation every time about perhaps at some point replacing them with electric.
It is now part of Tim's standard operating procedure to look for options first and see if as anything that would meet the department's needs.
Yep. All right, so we have
Zero turn.
a motion. And we have a second. Any more discussion? No. Tom?
Tom Myers, aye.
Bill at the end?
William Wilson, aye.
Rosie?
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Carolyn Boyu, aye. Awesome. Next, we have the approval of the use of $25,000 from ARPA for security cameras at Patton Park and the Patton Park pool. As folks may remember, we had some unfortunate incidents over the summer with some vandalism at the park. And I think this has been a sort of ongoing topic of conversation about being able to have eyes in places that we don't currently have eyes. I also think it's a more passive way to provide this kind of coverage without, having our police officers traipsing around the park at night when there are other things that they can be doing. So, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I'll try to do it briefly. Recently, the police department invested in a bank of televisions and recording equipment, computers, to be able to have several cameras around town. One of the areas we do not have covered is Patton Park. We continue to have problems with repeat vandalism, and these monitors are where they can be seen in the communication center at the public safety building, so they'll essentially be somebody 24/7 that's able to look at those and watch those. So we'll be able to pull footage and identify people who are doing what they're not supposed to be doing. And hopefully this will get us to the point where we can stop fixing things at the Patton Park because people are bored and just decide they want to cause damage.
Yeah. So if we're going to invest all this money, I'm sincerely hoping that there will be a lot of enforcement, because I know this has been an ongoing problem for years.
Yeah, our issue's been that we can't identify who's.
Correct.
And we will be able to now.
Good, that's good.
I have a silly question, which is the location of the cameras at the park itself.
That's going to be secret if we tell
Well, I
them.
don't want anybody to tell me, but I do wonder, this keeps bringing up to me the need to rebuild the gazebo.
Right, I think that we'll be coming back with more requests to do stuff with ARPA around fixing the gazebo and other more sidewalk work around town, but my understanding is the cameras can rotate. They can rotate and move, and they can be, so they'll be able to get a lot of coverage with the number of cameras they're requesting.
It doesn't sound like it's gonna be stealth though, right? There's a pole mount and.
I think, I think we put the cameras up and then we put signs, hey.
Yeah, I think you have to, don't you?
Smile.
Hey, smile, you're on camera. And that's better because people know that they're on camera, they're less likely to do things that they don't want to get caught doing.
Do we have to? I'm just.
We don't have to, but I think
I think in public,
Because then they'll
indoors you
aim
do,
for
right?
the
And outdoors you
cameras.
don't, or-
What's that?
I worry that they'll aim
Deterrence
for
is
the.
always better than anything, so yes, you want to.
Yeah, and the cameras.
Yeah.
Yes, until they start like throwing things at the cameras to disable them. That's what I worry about.
Oh, I think you can just.
I think they'll be
see
high enough where they're not gonna be very effective.
Okay,
The
fine.
cameras.
When it happens, we will
Cameras.
not notify
These
people.
cameras are all over town. You know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so there you go.
There's 10 in
But
the
see,
front.
we're not telegraphing that, saying, hey, you.
Everyone stop talking about it, we'll just. All right, so, Virginia, did you have a question or comment?
We can never find a place to film our meetings though.
Virginia?
She took her hand down.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just two short comments. One was George Orwell would really appreciate this. Big Brother. Seems to me we have a small town, small number of people, and I just don't like seeing cameras put up, taking most of their pictures of people don't even know they're there, and there's no reason for it. And the second part is, since it's going to happen anyways, in spite of what I think, I was wondering if it's possible they could put a timer on it so that it only takes pictures after dark or something like that, or only on the weekend or holiday, whatever. We use timers for everything like that. That would reduce the, it would help the longevity of the camera, but it also would be on only during the times that's most likely that vandalism would occur. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually know the capabilities of the company that's monitoring it. It's certainly something we can ask about. I think the other question we would need, or not question, we would need to talk to the police department about just when we need the cameras. And if that is, I think for now, nights and weekends, we can certainly talk about limiting the use. And honestly, I don't think anybody, to your point, wanted it to get to this point. But I think this summer there was some stuff that really tipped us over the edge in terms of the nature of what was done in the park. And I think that became a bigger threat to the citizens and the people that spend time at the park than anything else. And so.
Well, I have one other little thing to say is that, and this doesn't refer just to this event, but you can see how it does for others, and it's typically called a knee-jerk reaction, responding to the very first time something really bad happens, and it's not necessarily the right thing or the pertinent thing to do, because just because it happened once doesn't mean it's going to happen second time. And putting up signs asking people to clean up after themselves and make them aware that they have a park around them, so people won't be as apt to want to just come in and steal. But I do tell you that if it's a beautiful sign, anything from Salamander Crossing to a game camera, if people see it, they will steal it. So I know it sounds like I contradict myself, but actually, if they don't see it, nobody will care, except for people like myself that are concerned about having Big Brother looking at me when he just doesn't need to. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just to be clear, this has been a multiple summers effort. We have every year for the last 3 to 4 years had repeat incidents of vandalism at Patton Park, from damaging the bathrooms to the point where last year in 2023, we closed the bathrooms to the public and didn't let anybody use them for the last 3 months of the summer. It comes up every year. It isn't something, it's not a one-time knee-jerk reaction. We've been trying to figure out how to get the vandalism to stop, and without some kind of security cameras to be able to know who's doing it, we've been unable to hold anybody accountable and responsible for that damage. So we're doing what we can to correct that behavior.
I thought it was the first time that something really major had happened.
I wish it was.
Than earlier. Sorry.
It's the world we live in.
All right, so we have we have a motion. We have a second.
I do not have a
No.
motion.
All right. Could I will entertain a motion to approve the use of $25,000 from ARPA for security cameras at Patton Park and the pool.
So moved.
Second?
Second from.
Do you want it?
Tom.
Tom Myers, aye.
William Olson, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye. All right, moving right along, we have the Goodhue street speed limit.
Yeah.
I think,
So you didn't have anything in your packets this time, but you remember the last meeting, we did discuss this. We went over it with the folks from CTPS. The first step in initiating a change here is that the board has to actually vote what they would like the new speed limit to be. Then the town will put that in a package with the CTPS recommendation, your vote to the state to have the state approve it. Some of the other changes that you guys want us to make, including the intersection, we still have to go through the planning board to do that, but we'd like you to start by, you could accept the recommendation of CTPS, which was to limit the speed on that street to 25 miles per hour. And if you do that, we will post that as temporary speed limit while we await the state's approval of that. I am confident the state will approve it because it was recommended by another state entity. So we've done the study, we've done the homework, the state should endorse that.
Do we have the authority to do a temporary change?
You have to take a vote. It will be temporary until the state approves it, so.
Does this include the reconfiguration of the T intersection, just the temporary barriers?
You've already, we still have to go to planning board for that, at Scenic Road, and so we just have to make a presentation to them, and then we can make the temporary change.
Okay.
But we'll be looking to get on there, on an upcoming agenda to talk about that,
Okay, so this issue is just for the speed limit?
just for the speed limit.
And I think the idea is, correct me if I'm wrong, there's currently no posted speed limit, which
Correct.
means it defaults to a speed limit of 40.
Correct.
So we would post the 25, and then we would post police officers to enforce the speed limit for a period of time.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's important, we don't have any residents, I don't think,
No,
here today,
no.
but, you know, I think we heard loud and clear that they wanted something dramatic to happen. And I think we hear that, and I think the T of the intersection is something that we can continue to work towards. This is the first step. We have to try this before we do something like look at a one-way. I think we sort of agreed that while the one-way would solve one problem, it would create other problems. And so, you know, the first things first is committing to the speed limit and then committing to enforcement and just letting people know if you go on the street and you go 26, you're gonna get pulled over. And that should do that.
Yeah, and has this been coordinated with Ipswich at all, or is this, where's the speed limit sign going to be? On the portion of Waldingfield that is Hamilton?
You know, it's gonna be on Goodhue Street, on the Hamilton side of Goodhue Street, and you can ask to do it at the Waldingfield, you might have less success, it's a larger, more thoroughly traveled road, more heavily traveled road. The Goodhue is really just a connector street, it's a very small road, not really built for the type of traffic it's currently getting. I'd suggest we take a vote on the 25 for Goodhue right now. That'll be on the Hamilton portion of it, which is pretty much where all the houses are. I don't think there are any houses on the Goodhue, portion of Goodhue that's in Ipswich, so
Maybe.
maybe just one, but.
I think there's one, but yeah.
But isn't the speed limit on Ipswich 25 anyway, or
It's
not?
currently 40.
Oh, it is.
So if you're coming
Unless
from one
posted,
direction,
yeah.
you're posted.
Unless posted.
Yeah.
So we would need to put one right at the start to slow down.
I'll
and
put it
then-
right at the start and at both ends.
On both ends, okay. All right.
I'm sorry,
Quick question, how long is the temporary approval good for, and what is the expected timeline for the state for approval?
According to, thanks, Tom. According to the Chief Stevens, we have to vote it, send it into the state. It usually takes, 6 to 8 weeks, something like that. And we're only calling it temporary because we're waiting for the state to make it official. So it's not official until the state blesses it, but once you vote it, we'll post it and start education out there and try and get people to slow down.
okay, so my only comment is the traffic study was both for Waldingfield and for Goodhue, and there's a portion of Waldingfield that's in Hamilton as well, so, and there's nothing posted on Waldingfield either, so my question is, why are we not including the portion of Waldingfield that's in
And
Hamilton?
if you'd like to make that vote, you can, and then we'll see what the state says. I don't recall from the CTPS report that they recommended 25 on Waldingfield. They recommended 25 on Goodhue. So when the state reviews this, they're gonna look to see what the central planning agency said.
Control like 500 yards of it.
Yeah, but, the issue is the same. People who were here from Waldingfield also said that the issue is the same there, so,
I mean, it's
we
also
don't
the portion of Waldingfield that's closest to the intersection. People are just starting to accelerate or slowing down. I'm not sure that we have a real good sense of how fast people are going. They may be trying to
The
speed
last
up.
thing you wanna
which
do is
probably
be on a
unfortunate.
road that changes speed limits. I mean, if we got, the other town to agree, but the last thing would be on a road that changes speed limits within 500 feet of each other, but it's such a small portion. It's only this little tiny bit, and Walden goes all the way down to here.
well, I just feel like the town invested all this money. There are concerns on both Waldingfield and Goodhue. I think it would be good practice to incorporate both portions of the roads that are in Hamilton. And if the state doesn't agree with it, then so be it.
Can they approve one and not the other if we send them both in?
I'll ask Tim to submit them separately so that they can.
We could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, no problem doing it.
Might prompt Ipswich to make a change.
Right.
Or maybe we ask.
I was gonna say,
send
should we
another-
write a
I'll
letter
let
to the
Steve know.
Ipswich
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Select Board?
You can do that. I
And
was
we'll
gonna say, I
just-
was gonna at least let the town manager know and tell them what we were doing.
Yeah, I mean, if it's helpful for us to write a letter and sign it, we can send it to them and just
Yeah.
request that they
You wanna,
consider a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on Walding Field on that side.
okay, if you want your vote to include for the town manager to draft you a letter for Caroline to sign, I will do that as well.
Okay, so the motion we're looking at is to approve a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit for the Hamilton portion of Goodhue and Waldingfield Road, as well as the town manager to draft a letter to the Ipswich Select Board requesting that they consider a change of speed limit to 25 on the corresponding roads in Ipswich. Is that correct?
Yep.
Perfect.
What about, do we have to write a letter to the planning board too?
I mean, that's just administrative. We'll apply as the town.
Okay,
Well,
sure.
and Tim and the police chief and I will take that in the CTPS report and explain what it is we want to do.
Second,
Can you so move it and somebody else can second it?
so moved.
Second?
Second by Rosie. All right, Tom,
Tom Myers, aye.
William Wilson, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye. Well done, y'all. Moving along to the review of the special town meeting script. Just a reminder that the special town meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. Yes? Oh, did you
Yep.
say no?
Yes, no,
Oh, it's like, don't listen to me. And it is on a Monday. It's during our regularly scheduled town meeting time, so, and where is it?
At our regularly scheduled
At our-
town meeting location,
at our
the
regularly
high school
scheduled-
auditorium.
Yeah, okay, great. I was just testing you. All right, so, it's a pretty short-ish warrant.
Two questions, Steve.
Pardon?
Yeah, yep.
We have Bill's soliloquy at the top. You always do such a nice job.
You do.
Then we go into the reports and procedures. Is there anybody giving a preliminary?
This was added by the town council just in case, but I urge that we just pass over it or have the moderator say that we're not gonna, we don't have any reports and pass over it.
Unless you want to song and dance it.
I think I'm all set, to be honest with you.
Good answer.
Yeah. So then we have the section 2 financial actions. The first is the Community Preservation Town Hall project, which is the appropriation of the 1.5. Of course, this is a 2/3. We have, of course, the summary, the tax rate impact, and then the favorable action from Select Board, CPC, and FinCom. Then we have the Town Hall project, the $500 free cash, and the same, and then it ends.
Jay Butler is on the Zoom with us, and the chair of the CPC. He typically, in the past, has made the motion for CPC articles.
So 2.2?
So 2-1.
2-1, okay. Jay, are you comfortable with bringing forward the article in motion for 2.2-1?
I am, assuming that somebody will speak before me and give a brief outline of what the project looks like.
Yeah, so that was maybe my question. So we could either, as a part of reports, do a project overview that explains
Do you wanna
what
do that, Bill?
happened? Would you, are you looking at Bill or are you
I'm looking at Bill.
Dumbledore?
I'm looking at Bill.
Which,
I thought FinCom was going to do an overview, no?
Do you want to?
well, so the question is, do you do it before to cover both and just say, you know, Industrial Revolution brought a great many changes, and then go into it, or do you want to fold in the presentations within the articles?
and it seems to me that Bill Bowler, moderator, these are related. If you want to give a brief outline at the beginning, well, first thing, I think I may shorten my usual opening remarks because, you know, they might be longer than the warrant. And we wouldn't want that. So I may just identify the boards rather than go through all the individuals. So we'll see. So yeah, I think a short presentation on the whole project at the beginning. I mean, including, you know, where we've been and why we're here. So.
Would somebody like Mike Toomey be a good person since he has been involved since day one and
He has in the past skewed wanting to make the public presentations.
I mean, do you think based on what you've put together, you could do like a 3-slide 5-minuter?
Yeah, I think we owe the town, at least a single slide on the whole project. And I think, you know, you need to explain the decarbonization, even though it's not on the warrant. So the decarbonization, I think, should be part of the conversation.
Say more. Somebody said something. Jay, was that you?
I can't hear what John's saying.
Oh, sorry. He was saying that he thinks that we should definitely do an overview, but he also wants to include a conversation about the decarbonization. My concern is that people will think that it was not part of the original scope. I don't know that this is true. I'm just throwing this out there. And that questions similar to what we got tonight, which are good questions, but then lead to similarly people saying, well, if this is part of this and it's new, I don't want to do it. And how do we sort of focus on, we were here, we were good to go, inflation and rising construction costs happens, here's what we did, here was the creative solution, and this is what we're voting on.
Yeah, my advice is to keep it short and crisp, but fully transparent.
And just talk about the entire project and include the components, which includes blah, blah, blah.
The PowerPoint that was last given at the fall 2023 town meeting was okay. It just needs to be modified a little bit.
That's a great idea.
Who presented it?
Yeah.
Who presented that, Jay? Do you remember?
I think the architect did, LLB.
I'll get it. Well, we'll figure.
Not last November.
No, I don't think, might have been Tim.
I don't think so.
But that's a great question, yeah, and then maybe have that person.
I'll have to go look for it.
You did one of them. Remember?
I don't.
I
Doesn't mean I didn't do
this
it.
is a terrible thing to say because you did a great job, because remember one of the slides was missing from one of the, do you remember this? And you were talking to a slide that wasn't up on the screen?
He doesn't forget it.
I'm so sorry.
She's
It
so
wasn't
mad
because
at
anything
you.
was, no, I just.
Sure, you're right.
No, but I just remember us being like, wait, we're missing a, well, so I think let's then add that to the upfront section, the reports and procedures, and have an overview, right?
So how about this? Well, I'll plan to have, we'll update in consultation with Jay Butler and John McGrath and Tim, I'll update the 2023 slide presentation, and we'll ask the moderator to recognize myself to get it started. We may build in a couple of other people to speak to specific things.
team
We'll
effort.
have, ESG will be there to answer questions if it comes up. Hopefully, if they don't, that part is kind of paid for, so it's just a matter of getting the other stuff paid for. But we'll make a presentation. This is where we've been, this is where we're at, this is why we're here, and go from there. And that'll be under presentations.
Keep it shorter, but simply refer to the.
Yeah, I was gonna say, more than 5 slides and we've gone rogue.
Cover every detail you possibly could
Okay.
in there.
Okay. Be sure to talk about our creative solutioning.
And people will have had 2 weeks that read if they were interested.
So one project, and then really we're talking about the funding sources,
Yeah.
right? We've got-
Yeah, and I think that's the
Yep.
end, is like,
Right.
Yep.
so all this, we needed $2 million, we found it.
Right. One
We're
thing,
creative and, yeah.
Go ahead, Rosie.
One thing I think is really important when we talk about the fiscal year 2025 tax rate impact, I mean, this is a little, I think people need to know that it is not going to affect your taxes. And this article doesn't say that. The second one does, but this one does not. And I think we should make it very clear that the CPC budget, the townspeople have voted in a 2% surcharge, which pays for things like this. Therefore, there's not an additional tax impact.
Right.
I think that's critical.
Do we need to open it to change the language, or can you do that?
No, we're not making any changes there, we're just making the presentation. That'll be a part of the presentation. The warrant's already out, we can't change anything in the warrant now.
That's critical.
Well, we will, believe me, my whole, my whole message is gonna be, the only reason we're here is because the price went up. And there's no way for
Right.
us to have known that.
But people will be annoyed about that.
Right.
But I think more importantly.
But we're able to do this without.
This is what CPC is for. This is why our money has been coming out of we've been paying into this for 20 years for precisely this, among other projects that are vital to the town.
We want to say it quite that way, because it's going to consume the next 20, not the past 20 years.
Well, I think what I'm trying to convey is that the CPC 2% surcharge is not something new. It has been going on for 20 years. Exactly. And these are the types of projects that this program was designed for.
I think Jay would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
No pressure,
Jay, you're
Jay.
on the hot seat.
But just, I think it's important that all you folks read what we wrote, because it does explain that you're gonna be consuming 60% of the CPC revenue stream for the next 20 years for this building,
Yeah.
okay? And also, and we don't usually say this, you know, the financing costs are almost $3 million.
Right.
So those are hard tax dollars that are being consumed by issuing bonds this building. So I think if you make sure you read through all that, you won't get caught off guard. But it's important that, you know, we understand that it's a $12 million project, start to finish.
Yes.
So under,
It's all laid out.
so under Article 1.2, 1-2, whatever it is.
2-1 is
No, well,
Jay.
yeah, but,
Oh,
so
you're talking
we're
about,
talking about reports now.
Yeah, that's gonna be
Article 1-2 will be me.
you, and then your merry band of gentlefolk.
And I think it's also.
No motion, though, just a presentation.
We don't want to go into a lot of detail,
Yeah, because if we,
because, I mean, we could be there for a while.
Right.
And again, like, I think it's important that what Joe said is like, this is not a rehashing of the project itself. This is,
Right.
this is payment of the project that was approved.
right, and just as a.
Is a refresher of what that was.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I think that's respectful to the audience.
And then Jay Butler,
Jay's gonna do the 2-1, and then who wants to take 2-2? I probably don't have the temperament for it, so,
I could,
Rosie, perfect.
if not, unless, I mean, somebody else has a burning desire.
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
And then that's that motion, and then, Bill, you get us out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You probably should recognize the FinCom to make your comments.
Oh, yeah.
No. We've had enough from you folks.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Just constantly talking about money, it's vulgar.
I assume you'd be part of that merry group that
Merry
you
band of-
just described.
Merry
no?
bit
Or-
of folk.
yeah.
You know, I think that's critical.
I think, John, I'll share the slides that I come up with you, with the board, edit them, I'm used to being edited, but then I'll make my presentation short, sweet, to the point, and then recognize the FinCom to comment on it.
And you've got some good slides I think you want to share, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important.
Generally, you guys usually vote to identify who the movers are, so
The
just,
price increase we saw,
Right,
we're seeing elsewhere.
right.
The school building project will be impacted by it.
Oy,
Saw that.
don't talk about that.
Yeah, but the point is, it's
That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, don't.
But I think this was an
don't
old
try.
bid, though. That was really the underlying issue.
Right.
If we had redone it.
understand, does this make sense? And it does.
Right.
Well, let's just talk about inflation in general and.
Well, I mean, also, it was an old bid, but we put a inflation multiplier on that bid, right? It was an inflated multiplier. All right, so I will entertain a motion to approve the assigned motion movers and speakers for the official town meeting script.
So moved.
I think it's your turn.
Second.
I will kick off the votes with you, Tom Myers.
Tom Myers, aye.
William Wilson, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Carolyn, will you aye? All right, next I would like to recognize our resident cell phone enthusiast, Bill Wilson, to give us a quick update on our plans for
All right, well,
increasing
so-
coverage.
Appreciate the opportunity. Really, as I looked, I sent Joe a few slides over, and as I looked at them briefly before I came in, I don't know that they're in the best order, but we'll get through it. So just bring us back a little bit. As you know, we have an agreement with a company called Everest, and they currently built the cell, we call them macro towers. If you hear me use the word macro, it's a cell site, they can be 100 to 300 feet. And there's one currently behind Town Hall with 2 carriers on it, and that provides coverage. This is some crowdsourced data, which I shared with HDC. HDC had also approached me as the liaison from the select board to the HDC, saying, hey, we have a problem downtown. Our businesses need coverage. Our community members need coverage. We can't wait for another macro tower. Are there any other solutions in the industry? So this is just, really, this is downtown Hamilton, coming in from Wenham, and the red dots mean poor coverage. You can see this isn't current, upper right, I think we solved some of that with the town hall, some of those red dots, but you can still clearly see down around Crosby's, Rush Street, that downtown area, as well as Myopia, have some problems. And I think there are other solutions that we can consider. We could do this a phased approach. I did reach out to Everest today because part of their initial contract was a second tower behind our safety building. But like most developers right now and carriers, they're not putting a lot of money in small communities like this right now. So they're not eager, Joe, right. To build a tower right now. I will tell you, they said if there wasn't a school next door, potentially that would change some things because it's an easier move for them. But I didn't take that as any if we incorporate that into a plan downtown, we'll get a macro. What I did want to just communicate is we have choices and options to cover the downtown area. So this would be an RFP that we could do as a town. I also provided, I hope I gave it to you, Joe, but the HDC, I was working with the town of Wellesley, and there's about 5 or 6 other communities increasingly that are trying to bring communications, whether it be Wi-Fi or cellular, into dense or small rural areas that aren't covered by the traditional carrier network. So we could do an RFP to some of those companies. I think I list them on the next page. We won't spend a lot of time on these, but we would write an RFP, which would say we have a general area that we want to cover, like that map up front, and we would ask for solutions to cover it. One is, we could put a mesh Wi-Fi system down along 1A and throughout the downtown area. We could put in-building coverage, in Crosby's and other buildings as well. That would be like quick and easy type of solution. It would only be Wi-Fi. So if you were to go downtown, it would pop up, hey, jump on the Hamilton Wi-Fi system, and it would be free, and you could jump on it, but it's only Wi-Fi. Or you could go into something, and they're kind of interchangeable, but you could do what's called a small cell. And if you go to the next page, these are telephone poles. The next page, I think, has some light poles as well. We can incorporate it if we do any downtown development stuff and put new street poles. You can see little nodes on each of these poles, and they would put nodes like that. They would have what's called a head end, and we could put that in the public safety building. You could run fiber down 1A to the existing macro tower here, but you would be looking for a circuit of some sort to introduce. This would put cellular into that network area as well. And down along Bay Road, you would have little nodes on they would find attachments every, whatever the distance apart. This is, would feed onto that. This little leaky coax in the lower right would be, this type of system would go in, say, a Crosby's. And they could, probably buy into it, through the town. We would create relationships with all the carriers, because remember, we wouldn't have one host at this point like, Verizon and Dish are on our current macro tower down the street, but they would all, these 3 poles would run out each of the carriers in there, and then they would put in the ceilings of any business or store that would want to get access to it, and it would just leak out, and it would grab those nodes that are outside on those street poles that I mentioned on the prior page. Another solution you could do, and that's kind of a distributed antenna. When I say DAS, it's just putting nodes and antennas out there. This is just another, this is passive and active. I'm no expert in this, but this is where we would have to require a third-party operator to come in, and they're out there. They would run it for us, and they would make money off it, just like Everest is making money off of our macro there, and that would create more of an active system. Crosby's wouldn't have to get involved, and they would just flood RF signal into the downtown stores to make sure they have coverage. So, we could look at things like that, and that could also be part of a phased approach where we would say, okay, we want to do everything. A macro would be the best, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. A Wi-Fi network would be the cheapest, and I think if you go to the next page, this is what a Wi-Fi, they would go on poles as well. They're solar generated, so there's no electricity needed. That little canister, will connect to head nodes and provide a mesh integrated network down through the downtown area. Myopia would probably love something like this if they are challenged according to those red dots that we saw earlier. But that would be the easiest thing to do, and we could do in our, this would be easy to do, we'd do a proposal and such, but there's a handful of companies that would come in and have this thing up in weeks, if not sooner.
Wow.
The next page is, this is what it would look like downtown. You can see Myopia in downtown Hamilton. These are roughly what I think when I reached out to some folks in the industry. The nodes that we would put, each number represents a node. Each blue dot, you could make a separate area. So you could say, hey, I only want to do 18 and I only need 6 nodes because I want to cover downtown. Or you could continue up the street and you can do all of these nodes. You need, 4 of these main circuit nodes that really bleed out to the other white nodes. So, but it's a way to integrate Wi-Fi, whether it's a cluster of streets or downtown business area or along, through the park and up to town hall, basically. I think Myopia would be very interested if we approached, or, we could build a system and tie people into it, and it could actually be a revenue generator.
Is it a secure system?
They would put all the security patches and stuff in there. Yeah, that would be part of any RFP.
Okay. And this is the one that would be relatively no cost to?
I don't know the cost. I didn't go through that, so I'm not sure the materials and labor to do that.
Okay.
But it's the quickest, and doesn't really, you gotta get attachments and go through and look at where you would hang them and stuff. And it would be the cheapest, but I have no idea of the cost. I didn't get that far on it.
Okay, because I think one of the, I'm right around where number 18 is there. and
That's
it
on your
is-
house, I have it.
It was good.
You didn't tell
It is
Bill, I think he wouldn't be offended if he
unbelievable.
wanted to.
Calls drop
Yeah.
continuously. I don't even use my cell phone for business anymore. It's so bad. Anyhow, so my question is, my thought is, it's so expensive for people to have cell service, and then they're going to be smacked with another cost for this.
Yeah, I don't know, the town might get smacked for that cost, or we would get a third party, much like we did to put up that macro tower. You find a third party who would build all this, but somehow, they wanna generate income. They may get that income from, so the Wi-Fi is less enticing for them, though. They wanna tie in the AT&T, the Verizon, and the T-Mobiles. That's where the money is, and they're, and the carriers, I'll call them, love these type of networks because it's providing more reach to the end user and their customers, so they don't churn or deactivate from their network.
Right, and they don't have to, and they're not.
Yeah. So I don't know, there would be a pass-through, but there would be a cost for the town.
So a few years ago, someone came in and presented this proposal to put them on like the existing poles down.
My
one
first
edge.
year here,
Yeah.
And the select board at the time reacted negatively, and they went and
I
never came back.
remember that, yeah.
Yeah, but I think what the challenge was, though, we didn't own those poles, right? We don't own them all.
At that time, it was kind of common, they were going into, I can't remember the name of the company now, something mobility, MM? Something mobility, MOBILITIE.
Yeah.
So they were, they were trying to do this in a lot of cities and towns, and they were getting a lot of pushback, because there was a lot of concern about what the radiation was gonna do to people. So there was a lot of communities were pushing back on it, and I think Hamilton fell into that category. There wasn't a lot of easy acceptance of
They kind of
that.
went away, though.
So this wouldn't be cellular radiation or anything like that, and there'd be no need to go through like National Grid or anything, because they put the solar on the thing. So it's like when you put, probably Mobility came in, and they probably had to get rights of way and go across under the sidewalk to get to electric, and which is the next, I think, slide. I'm not sure what I put in here. I guess maybe we'll just jump to the lower right, is really the Wi-Fi, as we talked about. That's, ranked in quickest to market, as I said. So it would be Wi-Fi. Then you've got, those two in-building things, which would help the businesses really to kind of, if they wanted to tie in, and that could be something we could promote, to the portfolio of businesses downtown, to say, would it be beneficial for you? Would you want to buy into an integrated network? Is that important? I don't know. I think in Crosby's it would be. I struggle in there all the time. The third bullet is more that's the end game you probably want to get to. You provide a lot of coverage over a targeted area. They probably cover 400 yards or something like that. So it's not huge, but it's like, so you want to pick, exactly where, people are gonna, commute or work or shop or play. But that's that small cell or DAS host, and that's really using those same poles, but hanging those nodes that I talked about. That's a little more expensive. You do have to get the carriers involved. There is more cost. That's what you were presented. Probably an older technology, but it's come a real long way, because a lot of communities, and I can share some towns and RFPs that I've gathered that they have done and read through what they asked for, and I haven't gone as far as to say, what it costs, but you could reach out to Wellesley or somebody and ask them, what that was. But that would be, providing targeted nodes along streets and in businesses with distributed antenna systems. It's two different technologies, but they do the same thing. And then the last is macro. That's that big cell, working with Everest to say, hey, let's put a tower behind the public safety building, and that's gonna go long and strong.
Question, so the mesh system, obviously doing downtown is important, but it sounds like, can that be used anywhere in town?
Wherever you put those, those canisters. You could run them through Patton Park, you could run them down where people are walking on the street.
Well, 328 Essex Street. I would say a third to a half of the time I get zero service on my cell phone. I mean, it's just abysmal. So, if you could put them around town, there are plenty of, dull spots. So.
But you would still need to be stationary. You wouldn't have service driving through town. You'd have to
It would be
in
tough.
town.
You might catch it. I mean, the MBTA is looking to do something similar down along the tracks. And if you have it at a certain frequency and it holds
But you'd
a
have
certain
to,
level,
you'd have
it'll
to,
do a handoff.
Got it, okay.
But I don't think it would not be ideal on a Wi-Fi. I wouldn't recommend running it past Patton Park. I would say go to the pool and, cover downtown, in around the parking lot of Crosby's, up Railroad Ave. Is probably the extent, maybe down Willow, if that's gonna be something that we create a loop in.
To 18.
And the good thing about that, it's modular. You could start with, let's do Crosby's and Railroad Ave, see how it works, and then you'd add those blue nodes and you'd keep building, and like a building block.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're very eager, and then Joe asked me, hey, what are you talking to them about? Maybe we can move this thing. But I do know we could use some of their money. They're definitely the ones who asked me to look into this.
So what do you need/want from the board? Is this just sort of an FYI and you'll keep going, or do we need to make some sort of official?
No, here's what I would say. I would say maybe a letter from the town to Everest asking about their intentions, saying, you know, we continue to get feedback and complaints from the community about downtown coverage. They do have right of first refusal for a macro downtown. So we want to know their intentions and say, and I would actually put in the letter, you know, we're looking into small cell distributed antenna systems as a replacement that could be quicker to market. You know, that might, because right now I think they just know we're not doing anything, right? So they're not incented. It'll do one of two things. It'll incent or it'll say.
Is this from Joe or from the board?
I think Joe has a relationship with him. It'd be fine, but either way, either you or Joe.
Do you want it from you?
That's fine, I can do that, yep.
Okay.
You know, the other part is, I mean, if you look at the reality, that cell tower that people fought about for years has really not improved coverage, and you only have 2 carriers on that. I don't understand that.
Yeah,
So-
see, the carriers are having a rough time this year. You know, they're getting hit with, you know, cost of build-outs, inflation, interest rates. So a lot of their capital that they would spend in an area like this has been sucked up and moved to areas where they can get a bigger return. So it delayed. It doesn't mean it won't come back, but it definitely, the industry has seen with all of the carriers, a big slowdown in capital deployment. So it's not Everest's fault. They're constantly monitoring the big 3, or the ones who aren't on it. It's really only T-Mobile that to say, hey, you know, you're gonna get on this antenna, but they also monitor traffic usage, right? So they're probably reading that tower and they're probably not seeing a lot of activity, which probably tells them, are we gonna throw more money and get a similar readout? Because that carriers do the same thing and they're like, no, it's just not an area that is in demand. But I do think downtown would have been in more demand. That area is probably in more need of it.
Yeah, you know, I just will make this as a just sad comment on the way home on the train every single day. As soon as you pass Beverly, the cell service just dies.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, the train is experiencing it too, and they're talking about a similar thing down all the tracks on
Yeah,
Maple.
yeah. So
So-
anyhow, so this is a better
This is targeted
solution?
and, you know, like, I think an easy thing, and maybe we wanna just do a quick Wi-Fi RFP. We pick 4 companies. I can tell you who to pick if you want. You can, you know, see what the cost is. I could get you a bunch of RFPs that I can find at other communities and what they have done, and if there's someone on your team, Joe, that wants to drill through them to see what makes sense, that's fine. But
I think you overestimate my team skill set.
I brought this one in.
Happens to have one.
I happen to have one, and if we open the warrant, no. So in parallel, I think.
If you can share with me a draft RFP.
I'll start collecting stuff and maybe we have a discussion with Rick and or Scott, who are very interested in kind of in concert, maybe see how we move this.
That sounds very hopeful.
Yeah. But again, I wish I had numbers. I have no idea the cost of this stuff. So I could do some research, but every community and what they do is different.
So we would have to do actual RFPs? Is that
We
what
would
you're
have to do
saying?
an RFP.
Yeah,
Have to do it.
yeah. Well, couldn't hurt if it's going to improve cell service. It is just so abysmal.
So those are we have options, you know, but again, I think the first one is to say, hey, where are we at with the second macro?
Yep.
You know,
Okay.
that might move them, it might not. I did send them a text on the ride home tonight, basically saying, hey, we're talking about this tonight. These are some of the things we're considering. Are you guys interested at all in that second macro? So he's aware.
Okay.
All right, so no vote for us.
No vote, it was just a discussion.
All right.
So is the next one.
Yep, so the next one is also, just more of, I think, an opening discussion, so facility use policy discussion. I think, Rosie, you're owning this with Bill, did I make that up?
Joe.
Joe.
I could do it with Bill. I know where he lives.
And I think when we talked
I'm
about
working on cell phone coverage.
Okay.
the idea was just, you know, for folks to sort of give their thoughts
I'd always work with you.
on what they hope to see from this policy, so that Rosie can move forward with Joe on drafting it.
Yeah, and I think it just sort of piggybacks on our discussion earlier tonight, just sort of clarifying public endorsements, if you will. And so, right, what kind of uses do we want to see? And I think right now, it is just the Council on Aging, but it certainly has the ability to morph to, I don't know, would the Patton Homestead be involved in that? Would the Town Hall meeting room, once it's renovated, be included in that? So maybe that's the first thing. Do we want something specific to the COA, or do we want a general policy?
That's a good question. I mean, I do think the COA is the logical one. I think when you bring in the homestead, I mean, part of the longer-term master plan on that is event scheduling. So how do you, even a wedding, one could argue, is religious influenced, and so, but you want to draw and have people have celebrations, whatever might be there. I think where it gets gray is, the issue we had, with things happening during the Pride picnic, which by itself, we just didn't know all the booths there, and that caused, we didn't know what we didn't know. And so that created chaos a little bit, I think. But, so I don't know how you put better parameters around an event facility. And I guess the pool should be part of it too. No, and I know it's shared, but do people rent the pool for things and picnics and stuff?
Pool parties, yeah.
I mean, should that be part of it too? I mean, what if they're, I don't think so, because now I'm overthinking it, but I mean, I think anytime, because I could say the same thing on the COA, right? It's like, what seems, I don't know. I mean, we gotta be consistent to, I guess, any asset that we own and someone goes to should cover something in it.
I don't think we currently do any private rentals in the pool.
I thought, somebody told me we did. I don't know.
You can, on Sundays from 5 to 6:30, you can, don't quote me on the time, but there is like a one-time block that you can, that you can do like a birthday party or whatever.
Which I think is great.
Yeah, that's pretty innocuous. So, okay, so are we thinking we should maybe just focus on the COA? Is that what people think?
I would think that we don't have that many places in town, so probably it's appropriate to do a specific one for each venue and maybe start with the COA.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And after that's done, we need to decide to add other locations to that, or then mirror that and do a custom one for somewhere else. But I think it's good to start with COA policy and see how that goes. But I think it should be specific to COA.
Okay, I would agree with that. So that's the first hurdle.
And should you formalize our discussion earlier in a policy about the extension of friends groups to current town organizations and use of the billboard?
I think it's a separate conversation. You've already kind of had it. We can,
I'm just formalizing things.
Are you saying the same list for the COA?
Oh, yeah, because if we had a list and we said these are approved for this, then Joe can just run and then exceptions are brought to us,
But are you saying to work, sorry, I missed what you said. Are you saying to work in the signboard to the policy, or you're saying that we should use the same list of who can use a signboard of who can use a COA?
No, it'd be a separate, like, I'm saying you could do that as a town asset too in communication.
Gotcha. So town asset for communication, gotcha.
I mean, if you're looking for others.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's good to sort of make it a broad conversation, but then sort of focus down to this. So we've already got the first parameter. It'll be specific to the COA. And,
yeah, I guess into your Bill's point, I mean, it could be the same thing anyway, right? Like, so friends, groups could use the COA.
right, and that's, right, for fundraising things, I think that, well, the COA Friends have used local facilities. I don't know if specifically they've used the COA, but that's the question. I guess that's the big question. Who, and what, is it sort of our vision of what a COA should be used for, or is it anybody who comes in? Is it just town entities, like the Democratic Town Committee and then the Republican Town Committee?
What we talked about, right, just to paraphrase last time, was
sort of the barrier of entry was you have to be a resident of Hamilton to request use of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about whether that was legal or not, if you had to open up to the public or just, but I thought we decided it would just be town
Yeah,
residents.
we don't have to open
And
it
then,
up to
and then what we said was if you're part of a town organization, it would be free, but if you were not part, you would pay a fee so it could, at least we could raise some funds. Those are two things we talked about.
Okay, what do you mean by town organization?
Like a board or committee
Okay,
or friends of.
okay.
So, I mean, I should preface this. It's not a secret to anybody. I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole, which is why I'm letting y'all do this and not doing it. I do wonder then, like, if the gardening club wants to hold a meeting there, they're not a Friends of, they are a Hamilton. If a Girl Scout troop who wants to do it, you know, have a meeting there, they're not town, right? A Girl Scout troop is not town. They're just, and we're saying the space is not open to them because they're not a town group.
I did say that.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like, this is where I get anxious that it's like,
Right.
it's very actually, like,
It's the elephant in the room.
well, the elephant in the room is that this is very much a partisan conversation that comes out of the same conversation as flags.
Right.
It's all or nothing, right? It's either government only or everything else. And I think the previous board, for right or for wrong, decided to not make that choice. We said, we're going to continue to use case-by-case discretion so that we have flexibility in the policy. My concern with this is exactly the same, is that if we say it's government, it is a very aligned partisan choice to do that. That it suddenly, public spaces become government spaces. And I do not like that. I think that we talk a lot about small town and friendly and being able to do things, and to suddenly say, if you're not in the government, you can't use a building. That makes me very anxious. And that's the only thing I have about it. If y'all choose to do this, like, I support y'all doing it. I do not support a policy that is binary in that way. Almost at all.
Well, I thought last time we said we were uncomfortable with potential groups who would cause, whose presence would cause discomfort in town. And so I don't think Girl Scouts would, and I don't think Gardening Club would.
But the truth is, drag queens don't cause discomfort to people who showed up to see drag queens. That's the thing. Like, if a drag queen knitting circle asked if they could knit there, as far as I'm concerned, they're welcome to. They're welcome to do that. If a resident is a drag queen who knits and they want to knit in the space, it's not my job to say, I think you could be offensive to people, but Girl Scouts aren't, so you can't use the public space. I simply don't want to be in that business. And that's my concern, is that what I've learned this year on the board specifically is that what I think is kind and reasonable is different from what a lot of people think is kind and reasonable.
Well, I think it takes 5 steps back and say, do we consider, forget C of A, do we consider that building to be a function hall that's rentable by
Right, I
people
think
in
you're-
town? That's really the question. Then we can start to define who can use it. But that's what we're talking about. It's not, when people are using it, it's no longer the COA. It's a function hall that people are, either you're a resident and you're using it for free because you're part of a planning board or friends of this, or you're renting it for a couple $100 because you want to have a meeting and you don't want to have to leave town.
What does the library do, though? What is their policy?
They have,
Library has a policy.
They have a policy.
They have their own policy on their use.
But we don't
It's
pay
pretty
for
open.
it. You don't pay for the library.
I think people might pay to have a custodian clean up the room afterwards, because
Yeah.
they originally wanted to charge us for that, and I was like, take it, I
they
don't
have
want to pay you
they have
already.
I know if you go over a certain time, they do. I don't know about.
Yeah, it used to be 10.
Because they're here till 8 or whatever, and that.
But we don't really have a spot in town that people can have a meeting.
Right.
So wouldn't that be nice if we had a spot in town where community could have a model train, meeting, right?
We've got like the Legion.
Right.
But it's not a town, right? Right, the question is, as a town, we wanna offer a function room where people can rent for free or rent? I think that's the first question, then we can decide how we write the policy, but if we don't, and once again, we get it, the COA uses it, but it'll be a part-time COA, it'll be a part-time functional, it's not people renting out the COA. You have to look at it a different way.
Or COAs being
That's
eaten
what I'm
up
saying,
by
right.
external external to
And
the
if we just want,
COA.
if we just want to say the building is not a function hall, it's COA, then it's a different discussion. But I think it's
Yeah,
a first.
it's not a function hall. I think that's the reality.
Right, I think people, to your point, like, they need a space, and it's dark and closed at night, and so people have been using it. I think you could say that it's not, to your point, it's not a space, nobody uses it. If you're not the COA, it's the COA, and then we can have this conversation when the new rooms at Town Hall open.
Right, if we think the COA is deserving of being the sole discretion of that property, but once again, you have to see how often it's used, how often does it sit dark, and so.
But you also need to have a policy because you can't have viewpoint discrimination. That's,
Well,
I mean,
it's
and
not,
that's
though.
kind of, that's what we want to avoid. And I think if we are going to rent it out or let community members use it, so there's going to be a lot of ruckus about 3A and about the school consolidation. So what do we do when people, residents of Hamilton, are looking for meeting places for both for and against the issue? What do we do about that?
Yeah, my only, I mean, it wasn't even I wouldn't even say an issue. When the request came in to use the COA for the 3A meeting, my only concern there, which I had said to Joe, was that they were very clear that it was not a town sponsored meeting about 3A.
Right, absolutely.
But, people gathering to talk about it. Now, again, but if people gathered to talk about a Nazi uprising, then what, right?
Well, we don't have to extrapolate to the extreme, right? We're talking about town issues that will affect townspeople, and so people need to have a space where they can feel comfortable talking about whatever their viewpoint is.
I'm reading the library
Yeah, that's
policy.
what I'm reading right now,
It's actually a
too.
pretty good policy. I mean, it just says, it has all the stuff, then it says at the end, it says, it's,
If a meeting room is not being used by a library or town activity, the space will be available for meetings by government, nonprofit, civic,
Read the last-
cultural,
the
or
last line.
educational agencies or groups or organizations having a substantial relationship with the Hamilton Wyndham
I'll tell you,
community.
the substantial relationship, right? And then they say, final determination on the use of the meeting rooms by any group or individual rests with the board of trustees. So at the end of the day, they get even though they have a whole policy, they can vote to.
Well, if
yes
there's
or no.
something very controversial, you mean, is
Right,
that
well,
what?
they leave it open, they don't say.
Yeah.
I mean, this is as close to not having a policy as you can get with having a policy.
Right.
Right.
And it's free with a $50 fee to clean it. So the question is, we're back again, this is a fine policy. If we decide that, hey, COA sits dark and shuttered 5 nights a week, so between 7 o'clock at night and 9 o'clock at night, we're gonna open it up to the public to let them use it, and they can apply for it 7 days at a time. We don't wanna be conflicting with the COA activity. So the question, when it's not being used and it's dark and shuttered, do we wanna offer it as an asset to the community? I have no problem doing that, but I don't know what kind of study we need to do to see how many nights a week it sits shuttered, so.
Probably most.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Almost
probably
all.
most. So, and,
FinCom used to meet there, they don't meet there anymore, so. I mean,
CPC
it's
does,
very
that's
little
it.
bit. CPC meets there and that's
So
about
I
it.
don't have a problem using the asset and leveraging it, but I don't wanna, and I think this
So
policy is.
maybe take a read at that and see how you
Yeah,
incorporate that.
Rosemary, why don't you take a look at this and see if there's anything from there you like?
yeah. I'm for, I like that this conversation is heading towards open-mindedness and that I don't want to discriminate against people who want to use it. And so maybe we're talking about some tolerance here, like if a drag queen knitting group, to take it way out there to the nth, then if somebody else is allowed who has a differing viewpoint about 3A or the consolidation, I'm fine with it. I don't want to see any discrimination. I don't think something like that, maybe because, and I'll take it in terms of the cell tower, okay? So the town is for another big old cell tower. And there are lots of people in town who are against a big old cell tower. So because we are the executive board for the town, I don't want us, in our discretion, to say, no, you can't come in here and talk about not having a cell tower. I want us to be open-minded and tolerant enough that it's not our viewpoint, but you go in there and you have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like, the before one was just that the actual request said, like, the town of Hamilton conversation, and I was like, we just need to make sure it's like a community conversation
Yeah, yeah.
by residents.
Okay, yeah, that's
The same way,
fair.
that was
Okay.
it, that we just, anytime there's someone presenting town information, it has to be clear that this isn't a town meeting. Does that make sense?
Right. It's not a town sanctioned.
It's not a sound,
event.
yeah.
Yes,
And that was like I said, I was like, fine with me, but like, careful, because people will say like, oh, you guys are hosting this thing about 3A, and I was like, no. There's a group of residents that want to talk about 3A that are doing it there.
Right.
I have
Okay.
no problem with it.
So in that sense, it can be a pretty simple policy, right? That we're not gonna discriminate against any group, and
This room has been free forever.
Yeah.
I don't think it's had any controversy in this room for anything that people wanted to
well,
have
I
in this
think
room.
there are sort of peripheral things that have been going on that sort of make people raise an eyebrow, and I'm for just,
Right.
you know what, deal with it. There are differences. I just don't want to see discrimination toward any group, and politically, there has been, I'm not saying this town in particular, but in general, there's been a lot of political discrimination, and I just, that gets my hackles up more than anything. If we're gonna rent it to person A, or let them use it, then we'll rent it to person B, C, and D, and I'm fine with that. So I think that the town, that when you look at the library saying, well, the trustees will have ultimate discretion. No, it shouldn't be discretionary unless some group comes in who has been known to
But
tear up a room.
I think that line exists almost in every policy we have, where at the bottom it says, but it's up to the discretion of the select board. That exists in so many, I mean, that exists in almost, give a whole policy, but then the last line's always, but it's like Bill said, your safety net.
Well, for good cause,
Yeah,
might be a
exactly,
good,
so,
for good cause.
I agree with you that we wanna be open to everybody, but I don't think we wanna also eliminate that
Okay,
phrase in the policy.
so the town reserves the right
Yeah.
to deny,
Select board based on review, whatever, but.
you know, for good cause. Like, we can't just say, we don't like your
Controversial
viewpoint, so
or-
you can't come in.
Yeah,
So do people agree with
Yeah,
that?
I mean, maybe Tom can help write that phrase or whatever, but I agree with you that we wanna be open
Yeah, yeah.
and use it as an asset, but I think it comes back to, you know, we have to decide what the hours are that's not gonna impact what COA is trying to do, because we don't wanna be negative. I think that's the most point of our policy, is how to differentiate the two.
Yeah, so
Not impact
we'll
their-
have.
Not impact their operations and make them feel like we're trying to, you know, retitle the building.
Right, to the
Retrade it,
wild,
yeah, exactly.
the wild zone.
But I do like the idea of an asset being used and allowing people to promote
Yeah,
gathering
it's great.
for citizens, right, so.
So we just need to, and this would, Joe, we would think about this with the policy, the hours, a cleaning fee or something like that.
Capacity of the
Can you work on the banner policy too while you're at it, Rosemary?
Yeah.
I mean, they have
The
stuff in
banner
there.
policy, you mean with the electric?
We never finished the banner policy. What banners we can have up on the tennis courts and when.
Oh, I didn't know about that, sure. Yeah.
We don't know, the one we have 3 different versions of it.
I could work on that, yeah.
Depending upon where you look.
I know, I think the banners get out of control sometimes.
They
I think
do.
there should be a size
Yeah,
and
that's
time duration. How am I doing?
The community house on the fence just drives me crazy.
It turned out we were wrong. Like, they can do it. Is that what we learned?
Yeah.
You mean, at their property?
We don't have a policy. We have a policy on temporary signage, but is that considered temporary signage? I have no idea.
Okay, let me see if you agree that I do a good job on
Yes,
this,
start
and then
with
I'll
one.
take on the next one.
Let's start with one.
Awesome.
Okay.
You can have that for the next meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, so you want this,
Before you do that,
okay, so you want this by the next meeting?
No,
No.
that's
But
not a
we can
priority.
do it.
After the,
After the town meeting, I'm off the hook for that, so it would be.
Joe, what do you got for us?
real quick, in your packets, not on the agenda, but just under new business, I gave you drafts of 2 new IMAs. Both IMAs need to be updated. I invite you to take a look at them. I'll be bringing them back to you, hopefully
Okay.
for vote in October. Both are with Manchester.
Oh, yeah, I saw those were good.
Yeah.
Conservation.
Conservation agent and I have HR. So
HR.
we'll be making some changes with HR. Rockport's going to be dropping out of the partnership, which is great because we get more hours. So we need more hours.
So,
why are they dropping out?
They're going to hire their own full-time.
Oh, okay. It wasn't live.
They've tried to steal ours, and she said
So-
no.
No, we wouldn't let
so,
it go.
so Joe, in terms of,
It's not really up to me. She was offered and said no, so.
talk about new agenda items yet?
No, because you tried to
You
adjourn
already
us.
motioned us.
I got one thing though, I got one thing I wanna,
What's
I
your?
got one thing to bring up and just, I talked to Joe about it previously, but I just wanna, I'm hoping it resolves itself in the next week or so, but if by the next week's meeting, the construction project is still on hold, I think we need to have a discussion, because I don't understand why our town, one group is fighting a different group and costing the town time and money. The worst thing you can do for a construction project is stop the momentum and put it on hold, because it costs the town money, which means you're gonna get less out of the project, because the budget is finite, and now you're gonna get less out of the budget. You're paying for people to sit at home, and nothing's happening. And you're losing momentum, you're gonna lose people who are gonna have to go to different job sites. So if the project's gonna continue anyways, and we have to follow with paperwork, there should be a timeline or a deadline or a process on stopping a project. So I just want, and I don't understand still how one person, and I don't know if it came up in a vote, did the committee vote?
There's a
I
couple
don't-
of things.
so I
There's
just
a
wanna
couple
make
things
sure,
that
I
are-
don't wanna get into it right now, I just wanna make sure that if it's still, by the time we have it still on hold, we need to have a bigger discussion about how one person can put a project out on hold. So,
Are you talking about the school?
the
Yeah,
fields, yeah.
The conservation.
Turf fields.
Committee.
Yeah.
They're gonna have a meeting,
I-
and that issue is going to be on the
Right,
agenda
but
for
the meeting didn't
Wednesday.
happen, and they didn't vote, and one person wrote a letter, and so I just don't understand why that makes sense to do as a town, that we're trying to work together. So I just wanna make sure if it's not resolved by next week's meeting, it's on our agenda to deal with this thing and talk about it.
Well, but that's the Conservation Commission's
And we appoint the Conservation
jurisdiction.
Commission, so, and they didn't have a
Whoa,
meeting,
Careful.
and they didn't have a meeting, and they didn't vote on it,
They're having a
didn't?
meeting Wednesday.
I thought-
not to issue the letter.
Pardon?
Not to issue the letter, they didn't vote.
But the bylaw allows for a single member to initiate an enforcement order. and it
Initiate.
has to be,
Initiate, but typically enforcement orders are begun with a site visit, as was done,
Yeah.
and identify the issues, and you provide a period of time to have them addressed. They had the site visit, and then they issued a stop work. They didn't provide a period of time to have the discrepancies
We're not talking
addressed.
about a private entity, we're talking about a public entity to a public entity.
The past
It's
practice
not-
in this town
it's
is
not-
never,
it's not-
nobody's
it's
ever
never
been
done
issued
that.
a
It's
stop
never
work
been done like that before.
after one meeting.
Yeah.
Just,
these from what, the way I understand it, that these are pre-construction conditions that have not been adhered to.
No one's arguing about that. The
Right.
point is the process of you don't stop a project in a day, 24 hours. Doesn't typically happen,
You
especially
do
in public
lose
development.
crews when that happens. I mean, I get that, but, and I don't know the extent of because the way that I read the superintendent's report, it said it was mostly paperwork backup. And they needed to hire a compliance person,
Which was a new request.
which is the person who would probably do the paperwork. So I
Yeah.
don't know what it is.
I'm
You-
not,
you
I'm not,
gave more
yeah,
detail,
we're
Rosie,
not, I'm
than
not
I know.
debating that the requirements need to be met. I'm debating the process.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't think the process is right. I don't think it's,
Well, they were required to complete that process prior to construction, and they opted not to do it.
So Rosemary, building inspectors go to buildings all the time and say, you're in violation, you have 30 days to correct it. They don't stop, even though they had to meet it and they had a permit, they don't say unless it's some crazy violation, life safety, hazardous, somebody's gonna get hurt, they don't stop the process, they give you 30 days to correct it. They were not given 30 days, they would just stop, and so, I don't agree with saying, I don't have a disagreement with if they are in violation of something, but the process doesn't seem to make sense to me. So, like I said, if the process isn't resolved by the time we meet again, we need to talk about it as a board, because we're in charge of, make this town is fiscally responsible everything else that goes with it, and best interest of the town, and this is not in the best interest of the town, this process that
Well, I
happened.
would disagree because it's a significant environmental issue.
Not the short term, it's a long-term environmental. 30 days doesn't affect anything. To keep the project going for 30 days is not gonna have any negative impact on anything on that project or anything on the long-term aspect of it. Zero. You could.
Well, you don't
wouldn't have-
know that.
I do know that. It's paperwork, and we're not gonna debate it with you right now, but it's not a 30-day problem.
Okay, so to begin with, when the order of conditions was given to this project in July, they knew what the requirements
I get that, but
were.
people don't meet requirements all the time, Rosemary, and they're given, inspectors say you have 30 days to comply. They don't just shut something down. It doesn't make, it happens so rarely. This is a life safety violation, or something just so inherently dangerous.
Well,
Not because you're missing paperwork, or you might have a disagreement on the interpretation of what it means to hire somebody. So, and the fact that the existing conditions of the PFAS is a higher, that has nothing to do with the project and the permit of the project. It's a completely outside scope and discussion. So,
no,
Yeah.
no, it's.
we're not
it's
required to have the existing condition be compliant.
That's not the issue. The issue is that the pre-construction testing wasn't completed to the Conservation Commission's, order of
Yeah,
conditions.
because one of them was on private property, but I don't wanna debate this. The point is, they shouldn't have shut it down. They should have given them they should have given them a 30-day, or some sort of day process, and it should have been meetings, and it should have been a consensus, and I felt like it wasn't. So, people
should be a
from
consensus.
conservation, you're defending somebody you shouldn't defend. I'm saying, if it's still here, conservation should come here and defend themselves, and I don't need you to defend conservation. You're not conservation. You didn't, like.
I'm the
yeah.
liaison, so.
I know, but you're
that's-
not on the
No, I'm not.
Right,
No,
you're
no.
not. So let them defend themselves. I appreciate your position, but you didn't make the decision, they did.
That's
and
right. I had nothing to do with
Right,
it.
so-
I'm just trying to paraphrase their perspective so that it doesn't get
I
lost
appreciate you
in
playing
this
I appreciate you playing
conversation.
devil's advocate, but it's not productive conversation right now.
Well, that's your opinion. I
Yeah.
think it is productive.
It's not, because
Because I think-
you're not them.
I-
You don't
I
represent
think-
them.
I think we as a board need to understand their position. It's not just the school's position. The Conservation Commission is a very important commission in this
Can I-
town.
Yes,
May I-
Jim.
may I interrupt, please? This item isn't on the agenda, and I don't think that
I
we
just
want,
want to, you're right.
I don't think we want to be
No,
deliberating.
That's what I'm saying, I don't wanna talk about it right
I
now.
don't wanna deliberate
But I'm
to a
saying
discussion,
if it's
the
still,
decision of any
if it's
kind.
still a problem in
I think
2
it's
weeks,
a good time to break
if it's
this
still a
up.
problem in 2 weeks, we need to talk about it and bring them in, because the process doesn't seem to make sense.
Yes. So I think that, which, next meeting is in a month though, so we should just keep track between meetings of what we want to do. The
Yeah, that's a
second
good
thing that
point.
I want
Like,
to
we don't meet for a
add-
month, is that a problem for anything else, Joe?
Not that I know of, no.
The second thing, and you and I can talk about this, it's come up multiple times, it comes up when I'm walking my dog. We had made a decision as a board to support the decision, to respect the decision that the school committee had made to move forward with the singular consolidation as the proposal for the project. There's been requests for alternative proposals, and as I've said this before, there are no alternative proposals. There's what we can do if it's voted down, and I do think at some point we need to work with the school building committee or the school committee to basically put out a public notice of, if this is voted down, the options are to renovate, get back in the line for grants for this timeline and this budget, or do it on our own. Just because there seems to be this continued narrative that we're gonna show up with two options at town meeting, and we're gonna vote this one down and then vote this one in. And my understanding, and I can connect with Dana again, is that is absolutely not what's going to happen. There is one option on the table that represents the fiscal and feasible option that the committee has come to. And if that fails, the option is get back in line for a renovation at about the same price, or pay for the 3 school renovations around the same price out of pocket. But I do think we need to have something that shows that and says that, because I continue to get asked, like, what's the second option going on the warrant? And I'm
Right.
like, there's not a second option going on the warrant.
Right.
There's an order of operations if this fails, but it's not a menu. We're not saying vote for this or vote for this. So just for new business for next time, I think we just need to talk about what we want to do there.
Any other new business? Right?
I just have one question about the amicus brief. Is that all done?
Yep,
Okay.
Look at that, that was easy.
it was the easiest thing we did all night.
Will you circulate a final draft? Do we have it?
The final
Yeah.
one was, you were provided to it before it was sent in? Yeah.
And I read it, and it was.
I read the
it was
Milton
fun.
one too, so.
Yeah.
And the date is still October 16th? Is that still the same?
I thought it was October 7th. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe.
Maybe I'm wrong.
So is our next meeting
October 7th. Well, you have to be.
special town
You
meeting?
have to be a special town meeting.
Right.
We could have, if for some reason we need to meet, we could have a meeting before
Yes.
the town meeting.
Oh, we
So,
could, yeah.
so we should
You
communicate.
can also ask the chair to call a special meeting with 48 hours notice, so.
Right, so we could just, yeah, we could, for some reason, we need to meet a half an hour early and talk about something. We always have that option.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a good
good.
idea.
We
Because
did
we're gonna
that
be together
once. It
anyways,
was
right?
maybe like 12 Angry Men in that back room
We just
in
get
the
pizzas
school.
and hang
It
out.
was just, all right, I will entertain
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Tom.
Third.
Tom Myers, aye.
William Wilson, aye.
Rosie Kennedy, aye.
Bill Wilson, aye.
Caroline Beaulieu, aye. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
The mic's coming.
Good night.
off.
Good night, Virginia. Thank you.
9:30.
Yeah, when are the mics
Yeah, I
on?
don't wanna-